I hope everybody can hear me all right. Looks like we're live. I've actually got my camera set up, my pictures on. I think I've done everything right. Doesn't happen often like this. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody's having a good week, staying warm. Hope your power's up. If it's not, if you watch me on generator, I love your dedication. If not, stay warm. A lot of people without power here in Kentucky and Tennessee, and my prayers go out to them and their families. Hoping everybody stays warm and safe through all this ice storms that we're having. Looks like we got a little bit more snow coming on the way, so we'll just have to see how it pans out. But we were supposed to get a big snow event, and the snow event turned into an ice storm, which is the worst case scenario for us here in Kentucky because well, a lot of rural areas, we got a lot of overhead power lines, and when you get ice storms, the trees tend to the power lines. Hold on just a second. Let me copy these links. But yeah, it's the worst when that happens because we get a lot of trees down and they fall into the power lines. Of course, take the lines down. Got some aging power poles that probably should have been replaced a while back. I'd love to see everything go underground, but that's just not practical, I guess, for them to do that and keep our electric bills low. So I understand it's a business decision, but be nice if we were all underground and we wouldn't have to worry about a lot of stuff. But then again, we'd have to worry about maybe the underground conduit flooding issues with all that. So we'll just have to take it as it comes, I guess. We've had quite a few ice storms here in Kentucky over the years. I remember I think it's 2003 and 2009, maybe. We went without power. I think it's 2003. We went without power for like 7 or 8 days, and that was pretty tough. Just keeping the generator going, and a lot of people don't realize, when you got a generator going 24/7, got to change that oil after 4 or 5 days because that's a lot of wear and tear on the lawnmower. You think, you use a lawnmower an hour every time you mow the lawn. I'm guessing just an hour, a couple times a week, 40 weeks. That's 80 hours, right? So 80 hours. You do that in 4 days, running that generator full time. So those small engines, after about 80, 100 hours, gotta change the oil. So, if it goes longer than 4 or 5 days, you gotta stop, change the oil and the fuel. I mean, I think mine lasts about 5 or 6 hours every tank full. And yeah, that got to be a pain in the ass. I can't see comments right now, so if you comment, and I apologize, I can't address you right now. I'm sharing these links. Hopefully, Clint's here. I don't know. I haven't seen. I guess I better send him a link though after I get this all done. I should send it to him already. I sent him a link in case we go down. He can take over. But yeah, so definitely if you got generators, you got them running. After 4 days, 24/7. I think towards the end there, basically, we had gas heat at the old house when we were, in this situation, which was great because I could just power the rest of the house. We didn't use the stove or clothes dryer, but we used the microwave and all the other appliances, and it was the lights and it doesn't take much electric to run the fan for the gas heat system and everything. So we could live life pretty much as normal. We just didn't wash and dry clothes and didn't use the stove. So that was okay. We made do without the stove. We had a little toaster oven we could use and microwave. So we made do with that, and it wasn't so bad, but we were fortunate enough. I ended up we had a big long line when it happened. We had to wait in line for a long time to get a generator because, of course, everybody in town needed one, wanted one, and I was in line early that next morning kind of camped out almost outside to wait and get it, and there was quite a few people in front of me. So I got the more expensive, probably not the best deal, and bigger one. Most people just opted for the smaller ones. I guess most people were interested in running their refrigerators, right, and keeping their food safe. So that was one of their biggest concerns. So, uh, I out of mine, I ran some extension cords to my neighbors and said, here you go, plug your refrigerators in. This isn't to heat your home or anything. You're gonna have to figure out a way to do that, but I'm going to give you power to keep your food fresh, keep your food, from spoiling and stuff. And so I ran some lines to my neighbors so they could keep the refrigerators and freezers and from all their food going bad. And they might have connected a little space heater to it. I don't know, but it generator ran fine. It was, I think, 6,500 watt generator. It's a pretty nice one. It's old now. It's probably about 2003 to now, so it's 23 years old. But it's been a good one. I should have taken it out this past week and changed the oil and put gas in it and run it and just to test it and make sure everything was okay and get it ready in case. But I slacked and didn't do it. I'm fortunate that I didn't have to have it. I did move it though to the front of the garage so I could get to it easily. So that I did, but I should have probably taken it out and run the old test on it and make sure it was running good and done all that. But I got some friends in Eastern Kentucky and Southeastern Kentucky that are without power, and hopefully, friends and family are staying warm and safe there. Okay, so now they're limiting me again. Damn, that was early. I'll have to share those a little bit later. I didn't get to share it with you. Your group, I'm sorry. I will as soon as Facebook will allow me to. They had for the past week or two been a little bit lenient on sharing. I got kind of spoiled. I was able to share 15 or 16 times, but now it's back to maybe even less. I don't know, but I will just have to get those out a little bit later. That's how that works. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through the whole show without any hitches like last time. I noticed last time, sorry, for some reason, the Moonshine Militia link I got a notice from Facebook when Alan was here. The Facebook recording, they sent me a message that somehow it stopped. I don't know if what caused it. And I guess the same thing happened when Wayne and Amanda were running it on this end. My stream stopped for them. So I'm not sure what's up with that Facebook. I don't know if they're just not allowing us to dual stream or something. I don't know what the deal is. What's going on, O'Sheen? Ever run Buccaneer Bob's Rum Wash? Want to try to run next? Sounds user friendly. I've heard of it, but I've not done it. I'm hoping it's a lot better than the Bird Watchers kind of thing, but I will check it out, brother. Let's have a look, see Buccaneer Bob's. And I saw a big question come in, and we will definitely take that in just a second, but I definitely want to read about Buccaneer Bob's. Okay, it's on the Home Distiller page. Artisan Distiller, Facebook. Okay, cool. Okay. All right. This doesn't show the recipe. It just asks if it's okay. And let's see. No replies. All right. Let's try that again. All right, Buccaneer Bob Silver, Gold, and Black Rum recipe from rmperkins.com. This looks pretty interesting. Yeah, this looks better. Actually, for those that are Googling it, you can type in, let's see again, Buccaneer Bob's Rum Recipe, and then scroll down to rmperkins.com, miscellaneous, and they're sharing a silver, gold, and black rum recipe. And let's see, it does go by kilos and liters, so it's probably maybe European or Canadian or something, but we can use our little conversion charts for those things. I like, they've got live dunder, which is interesting and good. They're using lemons and limes to adjust pH. I like it. They're using trub from previous batch. I like it. This is awesome. Using fresh yeast. I'm not so sure that you would need that if you're using the trub from a previous batch, but 4 tablespoons. I'm not sure how many, 3 to 4 liters of black strap. So 14 liters of water, which is about what, 5 gallons, 4 gallons, maybe a little 4 gallons. 4 tablespoons of yeast, 4 gallons of water, a tablespoon per gallon seems a little excessive. Maybe back off that, especially with the trub. I don't think you're really going to need that much yeast, and I would recommend using, instead of the baker's yeast that this calls for, using a rum yeast. We've talked about how that has the enzymes, the glucoenzymes that will help break down the sugars. There's a lot of unfermentables, not a lot, but there's some unfermentables, a certain percentage, maybe 10 to 15% unfermentable sugars, and a lot of your blackstrap molasses and a lot of the different molasses, I'll say. So using a rum yeast instead would be great, and it would also be great to colonize that in your trub and carry it from batch to batch. I really like that. But yeah, I'd say those would be the only adjustments I'd make. Carefully stir wash to knock CO2 out of suspension. Okay, so they're degassing it before you run it. So it seems like a pretty complete guide here. It's I don't see anything out of order, except I would make a few little changes. I like that they're adding the lemons to help the conversion, and dropping the pH down to help the conversion and stuff. So that looks good. Well, let me I think I can share this page with you guys. Let me try to do that real quick, and you can see what I'm looking at. Here we go. Let's see. Nope, not there. Not there. Oh yeah, let me see. I used to be able to do this a lot easier. Used to have a little. Used to be easier to share screen. Here we go. Shit, it's right there on the bottom. Damn it! I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this. Let me take these comments out. Turn those off for a minute. Maximize that. Cover my ugly mug up. So hopefully some of y'all can see this and kind of read along with me. But this is page 1, and hopefully, let's see if it shows me scrolling. It does actually. Good. That's a good. Okay. So it's got ingredients here: the preparation, clarification, fermentation, stripping run. So it's a pretty good guide. Now I have to read through every bit of it, but basically from what I've read, it seems like a pretty good thing. I will share this. I will strip this down and share it on the DIY Shining Stuff group. I know in the militia a lot of times they don't like us sharing stuff from other sources, maybe copyright issues or whatever. I don't. But I'll put it on the DIY page, and mean, they put it out there on the internet. I'll just put a link to it so people can go there. You know, I'm not trying to steal anything from them. They put it there for people to use and learn from. So yeah, I like seems like a pretty good recipe, good little rum recipe. Again, a few changes. I would definitely try to use some rum yeast. If not, then maybe add some of the liquid glucose that we like to keep on hand and to help things along, and just use it as you would any other in the same increments as you would the other per gallon. But yeah, that's looks like a pretty solid little recipe. I like it. Good deal. Thanks for sharing, and I will put that link. There we go. Oh, y'all probably like it that way, don't you? My big ugly mug. Uh-oh, what have I done? That better, no, that ain't twist. That's better. Now we're back to normal. Good. All right, let me see what's going on. Yeah, Oshina, I think that'd be good, and I'll put that in the DIY Shine and Steel Building page and in the file section, and also put that link in there so everybody can check it out. What's going on, Morgan? Good to see you, brother. There's old Clint. What's up? Oh yeah, let me see. I need to. What the hell? Let's stop that share. Interesting. Okay. So now we just click that and it stops the share, and now all of a sudden I'm small again. Oh, what have I done? Oh, let's see. Oh shit, now I'm too big. Now we're back to normal. I think kind of. Oh yeah, let me put the comments back up. It's still not the normal size, but yeah, I don't like full screen, so we'll go there. All right, let's see. Let me scroll back a little bit. Let's got some other questions. What's going on, Dale? Good to see you, brother. Hope y'all staying down warm down there in Arkansas. Yeah, the rum looks that looks like a pretty good little. Yeah, don't forget to disconnect your garden hoses. I did that I think last week. Yeah, don't forget to disconnect those. What happens is if you have a drip, that drip builds up and it'll freeze and it'll be inside the water will be inside your actual spigot. In fact, this is one I have to replace for the front. Seems like I always just have things handy right next to me. It's like a magic box. I just pull stuff out of. But what happens is, see, it's a long tube. At the end of it, it's got a shut off. So it's called a freeze proof one. So it keeps all this water. You're supposed to tilt it when you install it. You want to tilt it forward. So all your water drips out of this tube right here and comes out, because your actual shut off is way back here, right? So this is all empty and it doesn't freeze up and bust, which is what usually happens. If you have a negative slope, this will collect water, freeze up and bust. So if you tilt it just slightly forward like that, all this water will drain out and it'll drip out when you turn this off. Also, if it does drip and you have a garden hose and it's backed up, then it's not allowing it all the water out and it can freeze up that way. So yeah, I've got to install this from where my pipes froze last winter, and well, one of these I guess had a negative slope to it. I didn't know, and it busted. It was a mess, man. It was yeah, I've been procrastinating that, but I got to get it fixed. It was a mess. You know, my right above my desk to my left here, where my PCs were, and a TV and all of it just dripping right on that, man. Ruined shit. Ruined computers, TV, everything. Just dripped all over it, man. And there's a little hole in the roof I cut out to get me access to it, and then there's shut off that enlarged to make it a little easier to get to, and I had to replace the shut off valve. All of it was frozen. All of that it was bad. But we were talking earlier in, I guess, militia chat. They were talking about good ways to keep your fermenters warm. And a lot of these, they make a barrel heater if you have a larger fermentation. Now, if you're still doing 5 gallons and all that, then the old oil field heater like I use is fine. If you have, 20, 40 gallons, it's fine. But if you have, several big, or you got 55-gallon fermenters going or something like that, they make these barrel bands. And they just strap, you can get them for like 30, 40 bucks on Amazon. They'll just strap to it. 800, 1200 watt. I would go with the 1200. They say there's a special kind for plastic or metal. Both work the same way. You can use both interchangeably. It's just that when it comes to plastic, you can't crank them all the way up, right? So you can only turn them up so far before you're going to start melting the plastic. So they work great. They're used a lot of people in the honey industry and sugar industries. A lot of people that keep diesel, fuel and convert oils and fats to diesel, use them. There's a lot of uses, industrial uses for them. So those work pretty well too. Yep, everybody's waiting for it to warm up a little bit. Awesome. That sounds like a pretty good combo, brother. Yeah, I don't like, I like the raw sugars too. There's Morena sugar, that I like to use. There's a lot of different ones, but you can get that Morena sometimes pretty cheap. I've given up my source for it before, and ended up now when I go there to get it, it's like it's not there. What have I done here? Trying to make this bigger like it usually is. So I don't know. I'll live with it. At least make sure that it's okay on Facebook. Yeah, it looks fine. Okay, good. Yeah, sounds good. But anyway, this Morena, I'm trying to think of there's a dollar store that carries it, and it's like $1.25 for 4 pound. No, a 2-pound pack. $1.25 for 2 pounds is pretty cheap. It's like 60 some cents a pound. That's as cheap as most sugars that you're going to buy, right? So it's $1.25 for 2-pound bags, and I think Walmart has it. It's a little bit more expensive at Walmart. It's closer to maybe $1 a pound. A little less than $1 a pound. They got 4-pound bags. I think it's $3.85 for something. So it's right at $1 a pound. All right, Pat's got a big question. All right. The rescued mash is fermenting. I'd like to try and use the grain to sour mash. If I replace 10% of the fresh cracked corn, do I cook, gelatinize the new corn before adding it? Now that's an option. You can absolutely. You can gelatinize it right there on the stovetop, heat it up, let it stay warm. Just boil it and then just turn it on warm, stir it, and just keep that temperature right, and try to hold that temperature. Then add your alpha, amylase, and stir it up. Let it cool after 90 minutes and out, 2 hours. Let it cool, and then add your glucose when it gets down to 100, and then add that. You can go that route, or you can just dump the corn in there, grind it up. Grind it a little finer if you're going to do the other method. This method, just dump it in there as a cornmeal and add sugar, and that's basically just adding the flavor of corn. You're not really getting the sugars from it, so it's going to be a hotter. It's not going to be as smooth. It's not going to be as good, but it is another way to do it. So I'm not going to say this is the only way to do it, my way or the highway. No, there's lots of ways that you can do it, and I'm not one of those that says you need to do it this way or you have to do it. No, there's lots of ways that you can arrive at the drip. Some are better than others, and if you cook it and go the gelatinized route, as you did originally, it's going to be, it's going to make it a little better. Or, you can just, do like the old time, instead of doing Uncle Jesse's method or my kind of half and half method, you go the old school route of making it by just doing all new grains every time and just adding the back set, right? Which kind of defeats the purpose of the simple sour mash. But I think my way is kind of in between the two, and it's easier to do because that 10% you can do on your stove if we're doing small batches right now. If you're big time doing lots and huge volumes, it's still going to be a lot easier uh, to do the smaller 10% than 100% each time. But yeah, just doing the 10% on your stove. If you got a good size, 5-gallon pot or whatever, that you can sit on the stove and cook. A lot of people have got these little Cajun boil pots, and Lord, I've got one that's 30 gallons. So I mean, it takes up most of my oven top, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, you can definitely do that, and just reheat that 10% and gelatinize it, add your alpha, let it sit and cool off, and then add your glucose and convert it that way, and then just dump that into your sour mash once it cools. Right, we don't want to put it in there too hot and hurt that yeast. So yeah, that definitely can go either route. Start as a 10-gallon wash with 24 pounds of corn and rolled oats. Good. Add it at 140 degrees. We need to get that temperature up. We want that temperature to be 185 to 90 degrees plus. But when we add the alpha, we want it to be at 185, right? But we want to cook that as high temperature as we can get. So we get that water rolling boil. And that might be why you had some issues with the conversion. You want to get that temperature up to 200 degrees, and it's hard to maintain it. That's why we talk about steeping method instead of cooking it, because you end up scorching it, especially if you're not used to cooking things like that. You wife probably girlfriends, whatever. Don't want to sound sexist. There's some men chefs out there that are great. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but man, I like that question. It's out of my face. But cooking it, and kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, don't want to scorch it. Stir it up, but steeping is better. So get that water at 200, 210, roll and boil. Cut it off, add your corn, stir, and keep a little, keep maybe a gallon or two of your water off to the side, and you can, use that to see. Yeah, sorry, I didn't deal with that. When he said sexy, I was like, okay, all right, yeah, I am. But yeah, that's that. We kind of, yeah, I'm off the rails there a little bit. Sorry about that. YouTube brings me in, man. Um, So kind of again made me lose my train of thought there. Oh yeah, so you want to get that water hot. Keep a little bit of your water to the side. Like, let's see, you started with 10 gallons. So boil 8 and keep 2 on the side boiling. Add all your corn to that 8 gallons of rolling boiling water. Cut your temps way down to nothing, right? Just warm. That way you won't scorch, and stir and keep it warm, and keep it at 185, 90 for the 90 minutes to 2 hours. And then as you need, if the temp drops below 185, 90, you can add some of that 2 gallons that you got boiling on the side to keep that temp up. Keep it temp up for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And it's a process. This ain't nothing. Nobody ever said it was easy. But keep that temp above that, and it'll gelatinize that corn. And trust me, it's much better than doing the 10, 12 hours at 140, 50, 60 degrees, right? So as the temperature increases, the gelatinization time decreases, right? So you definitely, want to get those temps up to gelatinize that corn. 140 would be right at the cutoff line. I don't think it would gelatinize at 140. I think it's just a touch under the minimum gelatinization temps, but it takes many, many hours at that temp. So get that temp up there, keep adding that water, keep that temp up, keep adding that 2 gallons off to the side of boiling water to keep the temp up, stir it, keep it from, scorching on the bottom. You can keep it warm on your stove, or if you're using a burner or whatever, you can keep the gas on just a touch, just to help keep it warm. Or if you're steeping in a cooler, that's fine too. That's going to insulate it, and it's probably the best method. because it's risk-free of scorching. But just keep adding that little bit of water until you got your 2 hours. Then you can go ahead and just dump the rest in. Or if you got about a gallon, you're at 2 hours and you have a gallon of boiling water still left and it's already gelatinized, dump that gallon out, get a gallon of ice cold water and dump it in there and just help start the cooling process. After you add the alpha amylase at 185, stir that in good, give it about 15-30 minutes to work, and then add that cold water in to help bring your temps down. And it just speed up the process, because we do know that cooling temps become an issue now, because it takes a long time for that to cool back down. So once you gelatinize, once you've hydrolyzed and you've added the alpha at 185 and you're in the cooling cycle, it doesn't have to stay in that cooler anymore, right? You can start scooping it out, putting it in your fermenter. And if you have a chiller right now, you can use a chiller to help cool it off quicker. You can drop in jugs of ice, and help cool it off quicker, because it does take quite a while to cool off and get to that 100-degree point where we're going to, add the glucoamylase, depending on the glucose you use. Like we talked with Alan, sometimes it's beta glucanase. They call it gluco because it's a glucanase, but it's not glucoamylase. It's a little bit different. And some people think they're the same, and they're not. They're different enzymes, very close, that they're an endoenzymes that work from the outside in, and that they debranch smaller pieces, but they're not as efficient. The beta glucanase is not as efficient at making monosaccharides as the glucoamylase is, right? It's okay to use both. Most times when you're using beta glucanase, it's endogenic to the malted grains that we use. So there's beta glucanase is the glucanase that helps debranch after the natural alphas in that as well debranch, and then these beta glucanase help further debranch it. But there is some limit dextrins that are created. When we say limit dextrins, that's some trisaccharides, some quad saccharides. If you want, it's actually they're called oligosaccharides if it's beyond a trisaccharide. But it's 3 to 12 or so molecules, and we call those oligosaccharides. And it doesn't get all those debranched into mono or monosaccharides or disaccharides, which is 1 or 2 molecules bonded together. Monosaccharides are just individual glucose molecules, yeast level. Disaccharides are still bonded together, but you can still eat them. Takes a little bit longer, but they can still consume them. Trisaccharides, most yeast can't consume those. Some tries they can barely, do, but for the most part, getting to the point of it can't, and anything beyond that, certainly not. Unless you have some, goji or something like a yellow label that will have in there to help break it up into, fermentable sugars. So, yeah. Yeah, you need to increase your temperature, Pat. That might be where we ran into the issue, and it didn't get the conversion that you wanted. Got to get that temp way, 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 way up. So you need to get it 200 degrees, 190, and let it be at that temp for 90 minutes to a couple hours, and then you certainly will have gelatinized corn if you can keep those temperatures for that amount of time. If there's any starches in there, they will definitely be gelatinized. But I'm glad you gave us the process. That's what I was asking last week, what your process was, so we could get down to it. I know with Alan there, and I will apologize again, we didn't get to field individual questions. I didn't want to stop him. It's when somebody's feeding the information out to you, sometimes it's best to not stop them. Just like me, when I had to stop ban that guy, I get my train of thought, and the older you get, you'll understand. But yeah, it's not all's lost. I mean, you can add the sugar. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what you did, Pat. I made sweet or thin mash for many, many years using sugar and cornmeal, which is basically the same process. It just has to be warm enough to dissolve the sugar, throw in your cornmeal, throw in your baker's yeast, and let her go. I didn't know anything about adjusting pH back then. I learned. It's interesting that Alan brought up the Foxfire book, because that was kind of my only guide, pretty much that I had to go on. And so there were some basic steel designs, and there was a few books on moonshining in the high school where I went to school, and but we didn't have internet and all that good stuff back then. So Foxfire was, I've still got that book somewhere around here. I think it's in the garage in a box actually, but if it didn't get water damage from my garage leak. Um, but yeah, it was that was my go-to book for knowledge. That's all I had. So yeah, I ran thin mash for a long, long time, and it's fine. It makes a drink. It makes alcohol. It makes liquor, and you know, is it the best? No, but is it good? It was adequate. It was perfectly fine. It seemed great at the time. Now by comparing it to what I can do today, was it? No, it wasn't. Shines better today. The more you learn, the better to get. But it certainly wasn't bad. What's going on, Jeffrey? Good to see you, brother. Hope y'all staying warm. And let's see, I'm already behind a little bit. So let's just travel on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to find. Hopefully that site that we were on. I've got it. Yeah, let's see, what's it called? R.M. Perkins. Hopefully he has some other recipes. It looked like, I like the way his recipe gave the whole method. It just didn't throw the ingredients out there and let you figure it out like a lot of them do, right? It gave you the how to. So that's definitely going to get added to our files section. And I'll have to wait until 9 to finish sharing out these links. So remind me when it's 9 so I can do that. I have to wait an hour. Yeah, I haven't read through it all, Clint. I wasn't able to read everything, but this is a one-arm paper hanger, man. I tell you, if you ever hung wallpaper, you'll know. Yeah, good to see it, brother. Yeah, I've yet to shovel mine off. I'm afraid to, because I know it's solid ice underneath it. So if I take the snow off the top, it's just going to be ice underneath it. I've done that before, and it's like no bueno, man. Uh, so I may just leave it as snow, because at least you can get some traction on it. Because if I shovel it, it's just a solid sheet of ice, and I just expose the ice. So I do have some salt though, so I may just salt it. All right, so we'll have to add those to the page, Mr. Clint. Is it from Aussie? Okay, I knew it was Europe or somewhere. They were using liters. That's good to see, brother. I also need to talk to you, Mark, and I just was made aware of something, and we'll get that fixed. We'll talk about that later, brother. We'll get you taken care of, bro. What's going on, Scott McCopper? Yeah, they're adjustable, so you definitely just adjust them low, very slow. Start at the lowest setting and just go up from there. You don't want to crank them up. If you gotta, well, you don't want to crank them up, period, because you don't want your mash getting above 85 degrees or so. So depending on your yeast, right? So, but they are great in cold areas if you're not able to, when I talk about using this oil field heater, I'm talking about in a cold area of your house, right? That just like in a basement or a utility room, uh, where I do mine. It gets a little colder in there. I don't keep heat to it. I use space heaters. I'm too damn cheap to run a heat pump. I ran that thing, man, one winter here, and it was $450, $500 a month electric bill. I'm like, nope, I mean, I'll just warm, I'll keep the bedroom warm. I'll keep the kitchen warm. I'll keep the basement, pretty warm. I mean, it's not cold, freezing cold, but that heat pump, it gets below 30 degrees. It goes on emergency heat. Those coils kick in. The heat pump doesn't even work anymore. It's just coil electric. It's a real dry heat. And it's just, man, you watch that meter. Just, nope, nope. So I run these space heaters. It's adequate. It's, is it, posh and you feel like you're being pampered? No, but it's warm. We don't freeze. We stay cozy. But it's just, it's a big house, and I ain't gonna heat every bedroom, every square inch of it that's not being used, right? And it's very expensive. It's $400 or $500, and I got better things to do with my money than give it to the electric company. So these little things here, my electric bill is usually about 80 to 120. In wintertime, it'll get up to a couple hundred with these space heaters going, but ain't gonna be no $400 or $500 scenarios. You wish we had gas heat here. I like gas heat. It's safer too, because if you're using those generators, you don't have to. That generator I've got, it wouldn't even push this heat pump here. It's 10,000-watt coils in there, two 5,000-watt coils, right? It wouldn't even run that. Yeah. What's up, JJ? Good to see you. What's going on, Foxtrot? Did my first round, screwed it up, got about 500 milliliters of what I think is drinkable. I have a 25-liter LME wash on the go to try again. So, wow, liquid malt extract or light malt extract. That's interesting. You're definitely going difficult routes using that LME. I mean, that's all LMEs. It's a little different. It's fine, but starting out, it's a little complex. But hey, I hope it works out well for you. Now, if you can do the same thing that Pat did and show us your methods, and we can maybe help find out, what went wrong and why it went wrong. So, and what got screwed up about it. We figured out Pat's was 140 degrees, but we need to gelatinize those starches and get those starches out and use that amylase. If you don't have the amylase, Pat, then what you did is fine. It's warm enough to almost kill. I'd still go 160, even if I wasn't gelatinizing the corn, just to kill any wild yeast or any critters or any kind of bacteria, right, that might be in there. Then let it cool and then add your yeast. But so yeah, just let us know your process, and maybe we can help you get it lined out. But as long as you think it's drinkable, I mean, is it okay, or just okay-ish, or better than you thought? I mean, my first one was horrible. It was scorched, and that's about the only way you can run them. But hell, we drank it anyway. It's scorched. It's probably the worst thing I ever drank, and even worse than my watermelon. But yeah, it was bad, bad, bad. But we all go through this, baby steps, man. We all stumble, we all fall and get back up and try harder. Yeah, propane heaters, and I saw Bever had these little diesel heaters. Those look pretty interesting. I'm not sure how kind of exhaust comes off those. I don't know. Diesel. I know diesel is not the cleanest of fuels to burn, but I guess it's a little bit like a kerosene. I used to use kerosene heaters back in the day. In fact, I think they're still out there in the old storage building that's falling apart. I need to replace. Good to see everybody staying warm, though. And we had to say goodbye to Cool Man, because he was not so cool, man. What percentage of corn do you take out? Now I'm rewinding here. I missed your first part of that, Gary. maybe you're alluding to, oh, probably alluding to the sour mashing process. Um, yeah, you can take out 10%. It's a good rough. That way, every 10 generations, you've got 100% of new corn, kindish, right? You're going to always have some spent, but um, the regular sour mash method, um, they is of course using all new grain. Then Uncle Jesse, came up with a simple sour mash where you just add sugar to the grains, and by the fifth or sixth generations, it sucks and dump it and just start all over again and do that. Which is okay too. I'm not browning it down. I'm not beating it down. That's fine. It works fine. Um, I mean, you're talking to a guy that will do sugar shine every once in a while. I ain't too damn proud. There's lots of ways to make liquor, and but I found most people, but the fifth or sixth generation, complain that it's just starting to lose flavor. So, if you replace 10, if you want to replace 20, by the fifth generation, you've got 100% new in there ish. Um, yeah, that's fine. That'll work fine too. So there's no set rule on what percentage to take out. It's just whatever you want, right? I would say though, 10, 15% is a reasonable amount to take out and replenish. It's easy. You can do it on the stove, recook it, redo it, reconvert it if you want to go that route. If not, if you don't have to, you can just dump in cornmeal and get corn flavored sugar wash. I mean, it's not the best, but it works. But if you want it to be a little bit smoother, doing the conversion and converting that and then adding a little bit of sugar, of course, because just the conversion of that 10% isn't going to be enough to raise the gravity uh, of the water that you add to it, because you're going to be adding a lot of water to those grains again. And of course, those grains are not contributing any starches or sugars anymore. So you're going to have to supplement that with some sugar, but it's just not going to be as much. So it's not going to be as hot. So it's going to be a little smoother than it was. Is it going to be smoother than the old method of sour mashing using 100%? No, that's the best way to do it is the old way. But that's the reason they call this simple sour mash, is because we don't always want to go through all that trouble. And we can sacrifice a little bit of quality for simplicity sometimes. Maybe we don't necessarily care for the top shelf. I'm willing to, sacrifice a little bit of quality to just make it easier and get a damn drink, right? So some of us will do that. Some people will absolutely do nothing but the very best every time, and more power to them. I try to do that as well. But sometimes when you get old and you just want to freaking drink, it's just like, I'm just getting tired and I don't want to have to do that every time. But that's also a good reason to increase the size of your mashes, and just pump off what you need to each time and run that and let it go. It'll keep, so, that nothing says that you can't do 100 gallons of mash and have a 10-gallon, 15-gallon still and run 10 gallons 10 times over the next 3 or 4 weeks, right? It's perfectly fine if you keep it covered and keep the critters out of it. It'll be fine, and the alcohol doesn't go away. I mean, some might evaporate, but it's very minuscule. So, yeah, I mean, I know people that's had mashes sit for a year, corn mashes and stuff. As long as it doesn't mold over and get bad, it's fine. So I think the best way to do it is make a larger mash and have a larger mash barrel and have it a bigger fermentation barrel. I mean, and have it just dip out what you need each time, and every month or so you'll have to make a new mash, but you'll be able to run every 10 gallons a week. 10 weeks if you have 100 gallons, right? So that's the easiest way. Just do it, put all your work into it one time, get all your, that way you're not pulling out the grinder and the grain mill. You're not having to boil the water every time, because it's a lot of the same processes. You just end up doing more that one time, and it's less work. I mean, it's more work that one time, but when you consider all the effort that it's going to take to do that 10 times versus once, yeah, it's the way to go. So, I'm not saying get that 250-gallon tote, but if you can and you like to drink a lot and run a lot, if you can go through 200 gallons in a 3 or 4 months, maybe a summer, I mean, you could do it all at once if you wanted to, and just dip out of that thing, and it'll settle out good and be good and clear for you. Just pump it right out. I would recommend racking it off and getting it away from that yeast bed, and saving that yeast bed, and using that, jar it up and save it. But yeah, so that's some food for thought. Yeah, I always get the floaties. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Clint. Always the floaties on the top. I always skim those off because those are spent and gone bad. So I always skim those off too. Make sure you get those, and then take your 10-20% off. Glad you mentioned that. Right. Yeah, you're still gonna have to add some sugar, because of 10% of starch added to that. It's not going to give you enough sugars, right, to give you enough gravity to get anything. So you're still going to have to add some sugar to it. It's just not going to be as much, and you'll get that good converted grain flavor and a little more smoother than it would have been. Yep, and just stir it up, stir that old yeast bed up, and it'll start back up. And you put your yeast log in there, let it float the whole time. It'll just soak all that yeast up, and they'll start growing into it, and that'll work. That'll work well. And then next time you can, take that log out and add it to another fermentation. But I always like, excuse me, I always like scooping up the old trub from the bottom. Trub, flocculence. There's a lot of different words for it. Yeast bed. It's the same thing. It's all the dead yeast, the live yeast, spent grains, other things, nutrients, right? The yeast holes down at the bottom, and get them in a pot, and get some distilled water, and go through it real quick, and kind of, I like to get the alcohol out, right? And I think that helps it, and cleans it up a little bit, and then just pour it off, and then save it. You can jar it up and put it in your refrigerator. Now you want to, either put your lid on real loosely, or you can poke a few holes in it, and that way it can degas and won't build up pressure inside your refrigerator. Just a couple of pinholes, nail holes in the jar rim, your little lids, and it'll allow any degassing off. You don't want them blowing up in your refrigerator because it might gas off as they go dormant. Um, but yeah, you can keep them in the fridge for a while, and when you're ready to use them, bring them out, let them sit and get to room temperature, and then you can use that for your next. Uh-oh. Well, Gary, I hope I touched on it. I'm sorry it got lost, brother. Internet's a horrible thing. Happens all the time to me too, man. Yeah. That's why a lot of times when I make a big long comment on Facebook and stuff, on when you talk about politics and other things, I'll cut halfway through it. I'll highlight everything, copy and paste it. That way, if something happens and it gets lost, I just haven't lost 30 minutes of hunting and pecking, and yeah. Well, hopefully I touched on your question. If not, just kind of clue me in on what's going on, and I'll try to figure it out. We'll get to it. Or if you want to, after the show or something, I think we're friends on Facebook. If not, I think we're friends. Let me check, make sure. Well, normally I would have one. Yeah, we're friends on Facebook. Yeah, just message me, brother. And you can down in Independence. Oh, I had one of my good friends lived down there, man. Jeff Sanders. I wonder if you remember him. He is a wild one. He's not with us anymore. But yeah, just get up with me at the show, brother, and we can talk. I know I don't like typing a lot of shit. I ain't like Clint and Magic Fingers over there on the phone. Yeah, freedom units, baby. Period. Awesome. It must be nice having a job you can listen to this and educate while you earn money. That's awesome, brother. Glad you're with us. Got any questions? Jump in there. What's going on, Hal Billy? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, barley. LME is barley. You know, that's a single malt. What you're doing, and that's definitely advanced for a beginner. So I wish you the best of luck, and it's going to be a little bit different tasting. You know, a lot of people like it, and a lot of people don't like it. You know, it's kind of a love hate thing. You love it or you hate it. There's not a lot of middle ground there. Uh, I like using the LME is kind of a flavor enhancement. I've never used it just alone. I think Clint's done it alone some, but I've never done it just by itself. I've always just added it to other grains. Run a 3 grain and add it, supplement it with it. Kind of just to enhance flavor and help the fermentability of it. So yeah, it's that's definitely an intermediate advanced project you got going. So that's awesome, man. I hope it works out well for you. Yeah, man. He's welcome to welcome to the cold part of the world, brother. I don't think it got this cold out there, did it? But yeah, Gary, if you want to after the show, we're gonna try to get out here a little bit earlier than now. We ain't gonna go to 11:30 or whatever on Tuesday, but I don't mind on weekends, but I know everybody's got to work and stuff, so we try to keep it a little bit shorter on Tuesdays. Unless we got Alan here, and then we're gonna keep him as long as we can, right? Uh, but yeah, get up with me after the show, man. And if you're able to, we can do a phone chat. I guess it's a phone type thing through Facebook Messenger, and we can talk, and I can help you out, brother. Squirrel, man. I got my little squirrels running, man. They work. Yeah, man. They what did I say that sounded like that? Yeah, man. It's cold, man. Welcome to hell, brother. You are a hellbilly now. You know. 15 pounds of bananas. Awesome. I will say, Jamie, make sure that you leave yourself plenty of room in your fermenter for it to expand, because bananas will have a huge cap. And a lot of people, when they do their first time, they don't realize that, and it ends up all over the place. Just do 10 gallons at a time. Well, it depends on the ripeness of the bananas. The sugar count can vary greatly, and let me show you a little chart here. The sugar count can vary so greatly. We use our hydrometers, and I know we keep harping on that and going back to it, but really it is it's going to be your best method for doing this. Let me pull up this little file here. Uh, a moment, just bear with me. I got a chart here. Here we go. Let me use this. Wait a minute. Let me use this other chart. Let's see. Let me remove that. Let me use this other chart. It's got that's got some extra stuff in there we don't need. And this is a little bit easier to see. Again, I'm going to remove this so you can see it. I'm going to remove your question too. But bananas there at the top, they got a pretty good amount of sugar. So it's 15.6. And that's for a very ripe banana. There is another chart I've got somewhere that shows a range. Let me see if I can find that really quickly. I got so many files here. It's crazy. Let's see. Here we go. And this will tell you, this is how many pounds to use per gallon of water, right? So you're going to use 3 to 5 pounds. And that shows you 3 if they're very sweet, 5 if they're not as sweet. So there's quite a bit of play there in how much sugars each have. It's best to let them get a little bit brown, but not black. Everybody thinks that black's better, but actually by the time they turn black, some of the sugar's actually being consumed because it's that's part of the decomposition process is consuming it. So, but and that's the way you want them for your banana nut bread, right? When they're really dark black like that. But you can put them in the freezer too, and speed up the process and breaking it down. But hydrometer is really going to be your best way to go. I would probably start with probably a pound of sugar per gallon, and expect the bananas to contribute the other. So you've got 15 pounds and 10 gallons of water, so you've got about 1.5 pounds. That's going to be a little on the light side, so you're definitely going to need to add some sugar for sure. Now, if you had 3 to 5 pounds, you may get by without you needing a lot of sugar. That's kind of what this chart is for making banana wine. I wasn't aware that there was a banana wine out there, but you can make all kinds of. And if you want to see these charts, it's in the file section on the DIY Shine and Steel Building page, and should be in the militia as well. I'm pretty sure I uploaded a lot of these to theirs, and I can share it to you if you want. Send me a message and ask me, for this on Facebook, and I can send it to you through Messenger as well. I wish I could share it with y'all through this, but I don't think there's a way to do that. They haven't got that worked out yet. So, but to answer your question, yeah, with 1.5 pounds per gallon, I'd probably for sure would add about a pound of sugar per gallon. So you're going to need about 10 pounds of sugar, and then heat your water up, and you can also heat the bananas up. I heat it all up to about 160. Want to get the strings out. We want to make sure you get all those little strings off your bananas. Those are bitter, very, very bitter. So the more of those you can get off and pull off, the better. There is some natural amylases and stuff inside the actual skins, but it's best just to get the bananas out, use your sugar, and there is some starch in the bananas. If you wanna heat them up and gelatinize them and get the starch out of them and use some amylase on those, you certainly can. If you have some powder and you want to heat them up to 155 and use some powder amylase, that'd be a good way to get rid of it, get a little bit of starch out, and then follow up with some glucose at the end. But most people just use the bananas and don't try to do that, but you certainly can if you want to, because there are some starches in there for sure. But yeah, I'd start with about a pound, and then get your hydrometer out and make sure you get all the matter out of the way. So you want to skim just that banana puree. You want to mush them all up good. Use your drill mud mixer like we talk about, and you just want to make a custard out of it, right? You want it to be thinned out as best you can. Freezing them helps break them down, and letting them sit out helps make them mushy and where they're mixed in real well. So it's going to be kind of soupy, right? And like a pea soup or something. It's going to be, that's the way you want it. You don't want solid just chunks of bananas in there, right? So we use this mud mixer with on our drills, turn on high, just mulch them up, chew them up like a blender, and that helps stir everything up, break them up, and then let it sit a little bit, and then try to move the plant matter out of the way, the fibrous matter out of the way, and get just the liquids, and get a gravity reading on those liquids, and see about where you are, and add some glucose. Even if you don't add the powdered alpha or the high temp, if you take it up that high, if you do, you want to take it up to the temperature that you want to add it, 180, 85. If you use the powder, 155. But even if you don't, you can throw a little glucose in there, because there are some oligosaccharides in that you can get a little bit more sugars out of it naturally. But yeah, take that gravity reading and adjust as necessary. If you need to get a little bit more sugar in there, you can always add some syrup, right? Mix a little bit of water and your sugar, make a syrup, and just add the syrup. That way you're not adding a lot of water and kind of diluting it as you're adding the sugars, right? Kind of defeat the purpose. So, and just adjust it, stir it in good, and take another gravity reading till you get your 107, 080 that you want to start with. Yeah, I've used bananas a lot, and they will have a really big cap. So make sure that your fermenter is got plenty of room for those to expand, because they're huge, and they will. I wouldn't put them under an airlock until you're sure that you have enough expansion room, because you seal that, put a little hole in the top where your airlock is, it'll blow that cork off, and you'll have that all over the place, because it'll build up enough pressure to shoot out like a volcano, man, and it will make a big mess. Yeah, that's actually a lot of people use those barrel bands to keep that fried oil for, not that far behind I am, for diesels. Yeah, I got a buddy that has got a little diesel engine, and he's got several restaurants that he goes to once a month, and he'll pick up a big barrel full of their used grease. He takes it home and filters it, and he's got some additives that he uses, especially in the wintertime. He's got some additives, and he mixes it with some diesel, uh, and he cut his fuel costs tremendously, and he had pretty decent fuel costs because he's a delivery person, and he's got a little diesel truck that he delivers in, and basically, he's less than I think at the time is less than $1 a gallon that that it's costing him, for all the, in the wintertime you have to have additives, right? Awesome. Here we go. Got 100 pounds of corn already fermented. After I take it out to distill it to make the sour mash, what percent of corn do I take out? 10 pounds. And add caramelized rye. And what percentage, the rye, the percentage, there's no set rules, bro. It's all on taste and what you like. A lot of people started around 5 or 10% to, that way it's enough to taste and not overpowering. And if it's not enough to your likings, you can always add more. If it's right on, then you know where you're at. And if it's a little bit much, you can take away. But I think around 10% is a good place. A lot of people, if you really love your rye and you like that spice of the rye, 20 or 30. There's people that do 100% rye, all rye. It's no rules. There's no rules to this. It's all taste and preferences, and everybody's different, and nobody can tell you what you like better than you. But I would start at about 10 pounds per 100, and that would give you about 10%. And yeah, if you're doing a sour mash, yeah, I'd take out the 10% and 10 pounds, and recook your 10 pounds of corn in and 2.5, 3 gallons of water, right? Well, about 5 gallons of water. 10 pounds, 5 gallons of water. That'd be 2 pounds. Yeah, 5 pounds or 5 gallons. So yeah, 5 gallons of water for 10 pounds of corn, and cook that up and add it to it. And you can add you a little bit of sugar, and then you can add your rye as you want to. Grind it up real finely, and you'll get more flavor of that rye, and you can actually use less. Some people, they say, oh yeah, you grind it up real fine, and you get more rye carryover. And they said, but don't grind it too fine, or it'll carry too much. Well, I say grind it fine and use less, right? So you have to save you some rye. But yeah, it'll work well. It'll work real fine. Um, what percentage? And I guess have to add amylase again and cook the rye. Right now, yeah, on your stove, you'll add 5 gallons of water, get it boiling. Add your 10 pounds of corn. That'll put you at about 2 gallons or 2 pounds per gallon, which is an easy workable amount. So again, we're going to keep it above the 190 for 90 minutes to a couple of hours. Then we're going to at 185. We're going to add the high temp alpha amylase, and then we're going to allow it to cool, sit and cool. And you can add it to another vessel at this time to let it cool faster. The larger the vessel, the more it's spread out, the quicker it'll cool down, right? Get more air contact with it. Let it cool down, and once it gets to about 150, you can add your yeast, or I mean your rye. And let me pull up a chart here, and it talks about that. Boom. Now I'm going to move your question out of the way. So again, here your rye is at about 100, and let me move this. So it's about 145 on the rye. You see where rye crosses, it's right at about 142. So when it gets about 142 degrees, and this chart's great. It's also in the DIY Shine and Steel Building page files, and should be in the militia files as well. I'm pretty sure I put all these in there. Yeah, so at 142.5, once it's cooled down to that point, stir in your rye, and just at that point let it just cool slowly down, and that'll help work. And then once it gets, then you'll probably have some, if it's a malted rye, or you'll get some benefit from that as well. But if not, it will be fine. It'll add some good flavors, and then when it gets down to 100 or whatever your glucoamylase is calling for. Now, some will be 145, and that's probably a beta glucamase. And then if it's 100, 110, that's going to be more of a glucoamylase. Both are fine, but the glucoamylase is definitely what you want, the liquid gluco. And just follow whatever temperature they say to add it at. Some of it may be a little higher than others. Some's 100, 110, some's 145. About the same temperature, you're going to add the rye, right? So yeah, just follow the label instructions. They'll know what temperatures that their enzymes are denatured at. So that upper limit is, you want to be close to it, but you don't ever want to exceed it. But you want to be close to that upper limit. That way they're more active, right? They're vigorous and more active at that upper limit, and you'll get more activity out of them. And just do that every time, right? Once you get that, every time you redo it, just take that 10% out and redo it, because it's easy to do 5 gallons, right? Instead of the 100 and the 20 gallons of water you probably started with. So yeah. Or 30 gallons is what, 3 pounds? Yeah, it's probably 40 gallons, right? 40 would be 2.5 pounds per gallon. So yeah, probably 40 to 50. That used to 50. Yeah, 50 gallons would be 2 pounds. Where's my mind? So 50 gallons, yeah, that you started with. So yeah, it's a tenth of that. 5. Only had 8 liters. Toss 250. Now you didn't have to toss the whole 250. That's a lot. Um, right now, you did notice. I'm glad you observed it. You'll notice that when you get to that run and the tails start coming out, your temps will start to rise, right? And basically, what happens is, as the alcohol, let me show you a little chart for that too. So it shows you here, as your alcohol percentages decrease, the temperature will increase. That's probably hard to follow. Let me use this other graph here. Yeah, this is a little easier to follow because it's azeotropic. So we notice as you get lower and lower on alcohol, the boiling point increases, right? So as your alcohol percentages decrease and it gets closer to just more water than alcohol, the boiling point will increase. And you'll notice that as you run, um, it will go up, right? You're going from 195, 198, right around 200. Next thing you know, you're at 205, 208, and it's starting to heat up. And that's usually when you're starting to get in your tails. Don't go by that. Also make your cuts. But for 8 liters, which is what, 4 gallons? Or no, 4 liters. So that's a couple of gallons. Yeah, 100 milliliters, 150 milliliters should have been sufficient. But again, make your cuts because, use that smell. We talked about, train your nose to smell the acetaldehydes and ethyl acetates and all these different things that are going to be coming off there. And train your nose to pick up on certain notes and know when to make those cuts, and your cuts will change depending on what you're going to do with your distillate. So if you're going to age it in a barrel, it's going to be a little bit different cuts than if you're going to drink it as a white dog, which it will be definitely a tighter cut. You'll get more of a heart cut. But yeah, good start. Sounds like it went pretty well. At about 500 milliliters, good. Now, also, when it starts going up, keep the tails, and you can add that to the next time, right? And you'll get more production out of it. You'll get an increased production. So you'll be taking off the same amount initially, but you'll get more alcohol out of it. So good deal. And, let's see which one. Here we go. And I'll put those comments back up so you can see. Clip. Yeah. Now, yeah, you could either do like Clint's talking about. You can do the traditional and just redo your whole 100 pounds every time, and just add back set, and that's going to give you the best quality sour mash you can have. Undoubted, smooth, no sugar needed. Definitely the best sour mash. But the simple method with a little bit of the 10% added keeps it a little smoother, and it also perpetuates it, so you can just keep doing the same thing. Once you get in the rhythm, you'll figure it out. You'll know exactly about how much sugar you're going to have to add each time, and you now know how much corn and rye to cook each time. So and the temps. So you get your temps right and get everything gelatinized, converted. Add your rye if you want at 142, 145, and let that cool. Add your glucose each time, and just fall into a pattern, and you just write down your steps right every time, and you'll get a consistency, and that's what we're looking for, is a good consistent drink that may not be the best sour mash ever, but you're only using 10 pounds of corn instead of 100, so you're cutting your costs. And if it's suitable to you, if it's not too hot, if it seems too hot for you, then increase your percentages. Go 20%, instead, and that'll smooth it out. Less sugar needed, so that'll definitely help smooth it out. So you can kind of play with it there as well. And just there's no rules. You just take out as much as you need to get. The more you take out, the smoother it's going to be, but at a cost, right? So it's going to be a little more difficult. You're going to be cooking more. It's going to be a little more expense, but it might make a touch better drink. And there's a return, a quality of return. And at a certain point, it's like, do I really need to do 100% again? I'm getting a pretty good drink at 15 or 20 or whatever, 10, if that satisfies you. So it's definitely better than just doing the sugar, with the mash flavor. Sugar one. What's going on, Shadow? That's right, man. That's a good motto to stand by. Something to drink is better than nothing to drink. And with that, we need to have a drink. But definitely get up with me after the podcast. Oh, this is at 130 proof. Whew. I thought that smelled strong. This ain't that honey shine. Hell no. That's 130 proof blackberry and pineapple brandy. Pretty good. Pretty good. It's aged for, it's been about a year and a half old now. It's not bad. It's starting to estify, come into itself. Yeah, and yeah, get up with me after the show, brother, and we can talk about it. And it's after 9, so let me share the rest of these links real quick. Get them out there. Can't believe I don't know how many they limited me to this time. It was less than normal, so they kind of let me have a little extra posting there for a month or so, and now they restricted me more, I think, than they used to. So that's kind of crazy. Let me get the rest of those shared out to the other groups. I'm sorry to them that we're getting it late. Let's see. Family. I like seeing what's on some of these pages as I go through. All right, I think that's got us out there to all of them. So a lot of times people see in the top left on the link I shared, it'll say like 2 in the top, and that's because it's from the Distilling 101, and that means there's 2 people watching it from that particular page. But we've also got the militia page, which we got quite a few more people watching it on, and the 19. Some of you'll see 19, and some will, I don't know what if you see anything on YouTube. I'm not sure what the YouTube view angle, if it even shows it. But yeah, there's more than 2 people watching. You can see all the comments that we got from people, so it's kind of weird like that, because I don't have a lot of people on that Distilling 101 page. That's basically just my podcast page that I podcast from, and I just use that as my podcast base. But I'm able to share it over multiple platforms, so it's not really that critical that I have a lot of people in there. If you do want to join, absolutely do. It's called Distilling 101 podcast page on Facebook, and yeah, we got a few hundred people in there following, but it's not critical. I don't post a lot of stuff, but all my old lives and stuffs are on there. So and other militia podcast stuff on there that you see from the past and stuff, Damon and the shit show and a lot of other stuff. Maybe not as much as on the militia page, but yeah, you can find some old stuff on there as well. And on YouTube, go to Philbilly's page. If you want to watch old podcasts, this old podcast, definitely the best place to go would be YouTube on Philbilly's page, because they'll be, every one of them, all be on there every time. So without, let's see here. Okay. Okay, we got the comments back up. All right. I just got your message, brother. Yeah, just get up with me, man. We can go over everything and see what's going on with you. Absolutely. Yeah, you can reuse your yeast forever and ever and ever. Once you get it started and growing, as long as you keep it in, a suitable um, temps with not too much alcohol and you feed it and it has something to eat. Yeah, you can keep your yeast for a long, long time, and it's economic. Especially, we were talking. If you didn't watch, go watch last Tuesday with Al Bishop. We went over a little bit about yeast propagation, and something I wanted to talk with him about because I know he has a passion about. And yeah, you especially if you're using that Kavaki yeast that's very expensive, and some of these other yeasts that are quite expensive. Um, Definitely something that you want to keep and reuse, and yeah, they will go forever and ever and ever if you keep them properly and keep them in the range and everything. Keep them refrigerated, so it helps make them go dormant, so they don't need to eat as much, right? But you don't have to. You can keep that live culture at room temperature, but you're going to have to feed it and keep it going and oxygenate it and help keep it breeding. And they have what's called a copper donna or yeast brinks that they keep the yeast in commercial settings. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely want to. Another cost you can cut down on. You don't need nutrients because you've got all the dead yeast holes. So you've cut down on nutrients, and you're now using the best nutrient known, which is the yeast holes. That's probably one of the best. It's got all the yan and fan you need. You can supplement it with other stuff we've talked about. But yeah, that works really well. And so yeah, you can reuse that yeast, and it's recommended that you do. Again, each time after it, get all that trub up out of the bottom, that yeast bed. So you're going to siphon off all the clears above that, but there's still going to be alcohol in there. Some people press it out trying to get that last little bit. I used to be one of those guys, but now I don't really, because I'll just take that and I'll rinse it with good distilled water and no chlorinated, so it doesn't affect your yeast. But, get you some distilled water or, spring water, and rinse it out and get all the alcohol out of it. So you'll stir it up, pour that in that, stir it up, and that'll immediately, right? It'll immediately neutralize a lot of that alcohol because it's going to proof it down. So it's not going to be a high alcohol content, 10, 12, 18%, whatever that your yeast has a limitation on. So we're eliminating all that. So we're getting the alcohol out. We let it settle again. We'll siphon off that clear water and alcohol mix and do it again if you want to. And then we're going to add a little bit of sugar to help keep them alive, give them something to eat, and they'll, and keep them energized. It's an energizer, and then they'll eat get dead yeast holes and and then put it in some jars and put it in the fridge. Poke a little hole. Don't fill the jars all the way up to the top, and don't put sugar in it right before you do that, because we don't want them to get over vigorous, right? We just want to keep them alive, and they'll consume the dead yeast. And just keep that jar in the fridge. A couple of holes poked. Leave plenty of air gap, right, from the level in the jar. Leave plenty of airspace in between it, so if it does foam up and expand, it's not going to overflow into your refrigerator. But yeah, you can perpetuate that and keep it going for forever and ever, man, and just keep it going. Definitely an economical way to do it and save you a lot of money in the long run, especially if you're using expensive yeast like that Kavaki yeast. Yep. Yeah, yeah. And right, batch seven, that's good that you got good flavor up to seven. A lot of times people start noticing around generation five, six, but seven's good, especially if you grind your own corn. So if you're using cracked corn that's kind of lost its flavor a little bit because it's oxidized versus using fresh ground corn, that's definitely going to give you a little extra time. A finer grind will probably get more out of the corn than a just a rough crack, coarse crack. Um, but yeah, if you use the method that we're talking about, taking out that 10%, you eliminate that funk, right? You're not going to get into just a sugar shine with some spent grains, and you'll keep that fresh corn flavor. and it certainly helps. Strange though, I wonder what happened between 7 and 8. Because it's probably more than just the spent. There might have been some kind of bacterial thing going on, or something that some yeast stress possibly, that could have caused it as well. A lot of times people pour hot back set in, kills some yeast off, and they might be underpopulated and stressed. A lot of times they don't run enough alcohol out of their back set, and they dump some higher proof in on the yeast, and that causes a lot of stress, kills some off. So that's possible. It's hard telling, but as long as you try to keep everything scientific as possible, let that back set, use that back set to help melt your sugar. Right, you'll know how much to use because you've established that from prior runs, and you use the back set to help lower your pH and get your pH down and help making it sour. Right, that's where the sour notes come from, is from the acidic flavor. So you're using the pH to help lower, or use the back set to help lower pH and add flavor. And you're going to dissolve all your sugar that you want to use in that. And you're never going to use 100% of your back set, so you're not dumping 100% back onto it. It's always going to be a certain percentage, and that'll change. As you got it, whatever you want. There's no rules again. A lot of people use about 10-20% of the back set, dissolve the sugar in it that they know they're going to need, and then add water, right? And then check your pH, make sure your pH is down enough. If not, you can add a little more back set to it, and work into your recipe. So next time, okay, I'm going to take out that little bit of extra back set instead of having to add it later because it didn't get my pH right. So it's a balance, and once you get that balance, you can perpetuate it, and you can do the same thing over and over and over forever. And as long as you're not dumping, now when you create the back set, you're going to run your tails out, right? So you run all that. Don't go to 80 proof and then have 80 proof back set, because that's going to kill your damn yeast, right? And that may, so you want to run those tails all the way out, not all the way out to water. You can never get to just water, but 10-20%, and then add the sugar, melt it, and then add water to that. Make sure it's cooler. Make sure that proofs it down. If you do have a little bit of extra alcohol in there and you didn't get to run your tails out all the way, add that water, is going to help proof that back set down, right? And then add that. Check your pH. Might have to add on more back set, and then just perpetuate it that way. It works quite well, and it's something that you can just keep going and going and going. Spring in, spring to spring. And through the winter, just bring it in. Your time, things are going to change. You'll notice over the seasons that temperature change, that times of fermentation times will change, yeast stresses will change, flavors will change as a result of that. So you'll also find out what temps are best. So if you find that upper 70s works better than mid 80s, maybe during the summer, try to keep it in a cooler place. And if in the winter, need to keep it in a little warmer place. So, but yeah, it's interesting. It's something just to watch and learn as you go. But yeah, something happened there. Probably something stressed the yeast between 7 and 8. Generally, once it gets to the 5th or 6th generation, it just gets to where it's basically washed out. Your flavors from your grain, you're just not getting anything from it. You're basically just getting a sugar shine that's doesn't even have corn flavor anymore or grain flavor anymore, and you're just getting some funk from the grains that are contributing nothing. You're not getting any good flavors from it at all, maybe some funk from them. So, but yeah, adding that 10, 15, 20%, whatever you're comfortable with. The more you want to supplement, the smoother it's going to be, and probably more flavorful for sure. But again, there's a reward, risk, or not a risk reward, a cost and return curve there. So at a certain point, it's like I don't need to add 100%. I can do 20 and get a pretty good drink, or 15 and get an adequate drink. And everybody's opinion on that's going to vary. Some people 10% is fine. And some people, by the time they get to the third or fourth on the simple sour mash method, they're like, I don't like it anymore. It's not enough flavor. So everybody's taste varies, and that's why there's no set rule to this. That's kind of the beauty of it, and where the art comes in. You can make it your own. You can make these changes, and there's nothing set in stone that says you can't. And I'm not up here trying to teach one way. A lot of it comes from you, and you can make it unique and your own. And you can add different grains and try and experiment. That's what it's all about, and that's what we encourage. That's part of the hobby and learning, and using the LME, and doing more barley and adding some barley in there and adding some oats in there and some wheat, malting it, trying to malt and letting it dry and getting those little radicals off there, and then grinding it up and using it. That malted wheat adds a different flavor. We were talking with Alan, that malted wheat versus not, that's going to be a change. Malted grain versus not will definitely impact the flavor. And it's, different people find it, whether it's worth the time and trouble. There is some difficulty and time and not much expense, but a lot of time involved in the malting process. So I guess expense and setting up the screening and the things necessary to help facilitate the process and keep things from molding. Because if you try to malt and you don't do it right, molds will take over because you didn't dry it fast enough and efficiently enough. So there's we can talk about that sometime if y'all want to. Yeah, I see around 5 and 6 generation. I've noticed it myself and others. Most everybody agrees that by the 5th or 6th, if you don't make the change, it just washes out. I like the sound of that. Yeah. Apples vary so much in their sweetness. From a Fuji to a Granny Smith green. Some apples are sour, so it's a huge, tremendous. And this is for wine. This is not adding sugar, and basically with apples, you're going to get about a 1040 at best gravity with just the apple juice pressed on some of your better apples. 1040, 1050 tops with the sweetest apples known to man. So, most all your apples are going to require just a little bit of sugar to get the gravity up there for distilling. Now, to make a wine or a beer, doesn't have to be that high, right? And that's again the differences, and that was for a wine chart, but we use it for a true brandy chart as well. But yeah, all these fruits vary so much in their sugar content based on variety, species. So yeah, it would depend on the apple and how much sugar content in each apple. So yeah, it varies quite a bit. Yeah, turkey based or anything. Yeah, to get off those liquids. Yeah. My Facebook name is Joseph Wells Justice Jr. I'm not bad saying on Facebook. That's my full name. So add me up on Facebook, let me know, and join DIY Shine and Steel Building, and you will see me as admin on there. Or join the Moonshine Militia, you'll see me as admin on there as well. So either or, join up, and you'll find me, and you can link to me that way as well. And you can ask me in Messenger that way, or now I will say I keep pretty odd hours, and so I may not answer your question directly. It might take some time for me to get back to you if you type me a question in Messenger, but I do reply to all of them, uh, unless you're like the cool guy talk about how sexy I am. I might not reply to that. It's funny these days, man. I tell you, I am pretty damn sexy. It's funny shit. Yeah, we used to. No, I'm not going to even talk about that woman that come on here. She was crazy. Absolutely. If you got that equipment, use it. There's no use in having it if you're not going to use it. That's just tools. If you got a nail gun, you're going to put the hammer away. What's going on, Jace? Good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Afternoon, so that probably where you located? Yeah, I understand. I can read those auto corrected words. Clint's got me good at that. Looking at oak steel's pot. First, since it's modular, but needed thoughts on what you do for a first timer's rig. I'm not going to turn anybody against an oak steel pot. They're fine. Is this a stainless one? I'm assuming that they can get a little bit pricey, but they are good quality steels. They're heavy duty, but they're fairly expensive for a stainless setup. For a beginner, might be a little bit overkill, but if you got if you're well enough to do it's not if it's in your budget and it's in your hobby budget, then absolutely. I don't know of what means you are. Some people, they can't really afford a big heavy duty stainless setup like that and spend $1,000 or so on a pretty decent sized stainless rig that's a pretty heavy gauge stainless, like some of those oak steels are. They make good parts. A lot of the parts that we get in the United States come from oak steels. They're out of China. Uh, but if that's in your budget, then more power. Yeah, they make good stuff. I've got some oak steel stuff. Actually, I think in fact, I know my column. I just got some oak steels, and I've got quite a few parts from them over the years. Uh, and a lot of people also sell oak steel parts and products, um, kind of like a wholesaler. There's not a lot of people that make new stainless stuff like Wayne. That we'll try to get on here sometime. You see him on this past week with Amanda, uh, Wayne Herbert from Ozark, one of the few craftsmen that works in stainless. Uh, most people don't in the steel building industry. I mean, he's a fabricator by trade, so he's got all this equipment. A lot of us folk art, just he's an artist, uh, but a lot of people that don't have all that equipment in a big huge shop just work with copper. It's a lot easier, and you don't have to have it welders and all this other stuff to work it. So it's soldered. We can use our in torches, and it's a lot easier to work with for most people. Uh, but yeah, also, I mean, if it's a little bit more than you want to spend, but you're doing it because you think that's going to be the only thing, the alternative out there. There are cheaper alternatives. They're not as quality apart like the Vevers, but they will work and they do the job fine. So if that's a little bit more expensive than you want to use, and there's a called a football steel. We call it a football because of the shape of this cat. This is a Vever steel, also out of China. Vever company makes them, and we call it a football steel. And these come in, I think 8, 13, 15, and 18 and a half gallons. If you're looking for something larger, then probably oak would definitely have some larger setups. I'm not sure how many gallon rig you're looking at. But if oak steels are in your budget, definitely you can't go wrong. They make a good product. If you want copper, we got a lot of artisans that can make you copper. If you want stainless, and Wayne makes submarine pots, stainless submarine pots that are pretty nice, pretty cool. So it just depends on what you want. But yeah, I'm not going to steer you away from oak. They're good company, good product, and they have it in stock, right? They sell you what, it's not something that they're building as you do it and have to wait, which is also a big plus for a lot of people that don't want to wait, that don't have a still. But for beginner, this little beverage pot's a good one. Get the 18.5 gallon or the 15 gallon one. I recommend the bigger ones because it's something that you won't have to upgrade for a while, and it may fit your bill entirely. I don't know what kind of volume you want to turn out, how thirsty your friends are, but can't go wrong if 18.5 gallon running 15 gallons each time and getting 2.5, 3 gallons of proofed liquor each time, from each run is plenty. This will work. And they're relatively cheap. These are like $2.30. I think they were on sale for $2.08. I think that sells off now, but generally about $230, $240-ish. You can get it. It's a decent steal. Or you can get a beer keg. You can use a beer keg and just add a little column to it, and let me show you a little column that you can add to them. You can do something like this, get you a beer keg and add you a little column to it. And there's all kinds of different column attachments you can get. A lot of people will make whiskey heads that'll go on top of this, or a column, this column that you can add to it. There's different columns. Here's another column that you can throw on there, and that works quite well. Let's see if I can find it here. Well, it's usually right here with these. Maybe it's in here. Oh. Need to work on my files. Definitely need to work on my files. Get everything in the same spot. Bear with me just a second. Where in the world is that? Anyway, I have a different column somewhere pictured. Can't believe that's not right there. Okay, here's one that sits on top of a keg. It's called a Boca, and it'll get high proof, but that's not the one I was looking for. It's just a simple one that they sell on eBay and other places and Amazon. It's easy to find, and Philby has them. Just bear with me a second. Where could that have gone? Unbelievable. I just showed it a couple of weeks ago. There we go. Looking right over it. Okay. So this right here will sit right on a keg. It's a simple column. It's got a deflegmator here, or deflameter, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And shotgun condenser works very well. Those work quite well. You can kind of adjust your proof with the reflux on your deflameter or deflegmator. So those also work quite well. So it's just whatever fits your budget. Oak Seal is a decent product, though, I will say. So as long as it's a reputable person you're buying it from, if you're getting it directly from Oak Steel, yeah, it'd be great. But a lot of people also advertise and sell them, so can't really vouch for them. They may advertise Oak Steels and send you something that's not, or something like that. I don't know. It's hard to say. There's so many people that sell their parts. But yeah, exactly. Get at least a 15, 13 to 15 plus to start out with. Make it worth your while, because a lot of people start out, and there's nothing wrong with starting with 5. A lot of people did. I started out with a pressure cooker, very small, when I was young. So yeah, it's but it's a lot easier. You know, it's a lot easier to make your cuts. It's you get a lot more product, and it's worth your time. You know, it's tough to set up every time you want to drink a quart, right? And if you're just running a couple, you know, 3, 4, 5 gallon steel, and you're getting a quart or two of liquor, you know, you know, it's tough to set up and run that every time you want to drink a quart of liquor. You know, especially if you drink like I do. What's going on, brother? 9:18. You said that. And it's oh Lord, have mercy, I'm way behind. What's going on, Jamie? I'm sorry, I'm so far behind. Lord, I've been long winded tonight. I ain't been drinking a lot. Damn it! Can't believe y'all let me do that. Need to drink more. Talk less. That's awesome, man. We can get you up and going, brother, and answer any question that you've got. So bring us your questions, and yeah, yeah, you can keep your yeast forever. Yeah, just keep them dormant, and that way they don't need to eat as much, kind of like a bear hibernating. And yeah, you just thaw 'em, warm them back up, feed them a little sugar, and they'll reinvigorate and be ready to go for you. Make a little starter with them and get them to room temperature, and just pour as much yeast out of that jar that you saved and into another jar, and add a little warm water to it, about 85, 90 degrees, 95, don't exceed, and add some sugar in there to get them, started back up and reinvigorated, and give it a good shake and oxygenate the hell out of it, and then take the lid back off because you don't want that pressure building up, right? And set it inside a pot because it may foam over once they reactivate and foam up on you, and that'll just let you know that they're reactivated and that they're good. And if it doesn't, then we might need to add more, and we might need to start checking their viability. They might have died. You might have had something go wrong. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, yeah. If you ferment or hold it, any porous. Now we do want to make sure that it's not going to be something that has toxins, a wood that contains toxins or something in it. But yeah, the more porous, the better. So oak works great. But if you've got other things, I mean, as long as it's a decent wood, yeah. I think Alan might have touched on some different woods that he had tried, and I think maybe he's talking about some apple wood or some different fruit woods or something that was more porous. Yeah, if it's one of the ways that we did talk about the intentional stressing of yeast, and under pitching is another method for stressing, but that's kind of an advanced thing. I don't recommend to any of the beginners or intermediates learning how to intentionally stress yeast to increase congeners to get flavors, because that's kind of a complex thing, and you really, once you, like we talked about, getting into a method with your Uncle Jesse's simple sour mash, and kind of combined with mine to perpetuate it. Once you get all that into a rhythm, and you establish some consistency, and like I talked about, you'll notice some differences based on just the temperature changes alone in the spring and the summer and the fall. You'll start getting different flavors, right? You'll notice during the summer, you'll get a little bit more floral, a little bit more esters. And that's because of the temperatures of your fermentation raise. A lot more of those are actually created. Learning the fermentation process it's amazing, and learning the science of it and how it produces different chemicals just based on temperature alone. And there's lots of other stresses, and underpitching is one of those stresses. So it's not something that you want to do intentionally unless you have gotten into that rhythm and you're just kind of experimenting. Okay, I reuse this yeast over and over and over again. So I'm going to reuse less this time and see what that does and what flavors I can get. Um, Maybe you're getting too much yeast. Maybe you're getting yeasty flavors. Now, like we talked about that as well. You don't want to get a lot of that yeast in your fermenter, or in your boiler going, because it's not the best taste, right? So I am so far behind. I'm trying to catch up. Yeah, over pitching is not as big a problem as under pitching. Over pitching, it's overpopulates, and that's fine because there's only so much nutrients in there for them, and some will die off, and it's not a stress as big as a stress. So, um, and actually, like in the what was the name of that? The bird watchers recipe, they talk about using tomato paste as a nutrient. Actually, the tomato paste is a nutrient. The tomato paste is a supplement to the nutrient and helps get pH down, which is a good thing. Both good things. It helps lower the pH, and it also adds supplemental nutrients. But the actual real nutrients are coming from the way over pitching of the yeast, which it calls for. So that's actually where the nutrients are coming from in that birdwatcher recipe, because they way overpitched, way overpitched the yeast in that, based on the recipes that I've seen. Yeah, this is crazy. Right, now that's something we talked about. I brought up because it's been, I've had some questions, people asking about. Um, and for advanced, it's for advanced study, it's a great thing. Once you develop the consistency I talked about, and you want to, touch on certain floral notes, like you noticed during the summer, your distillate had a little bit more flavor with floral notes, and sweeter, more floral notes, and that's because of the temperature. A lot of times when you raise that temperature up, you increase that esterification that creates more of a floral note, and some may want to experiment with that and say, well, I normally do 80, let's do 90. Some may not want to do it that drastic, like Al was talking about. Some may do a little bit at a time, but I'm sure he probably did a little bit of time, and then he got to 90 and you're like, wow, this is definitely, this is giving us the notes we want. This giving us the floor notes we want. But that doesn't mean every time you should do every fermentation at 90, right? This is something that kind of deviates from the norm to get this specific flavor note that we're looking for in this particular distillate, like maybe a gin or something, where you wanted, it doesn't have as much juniper, and then we're going for a more floral gin, like a lot of people are doing these days with some citrus, and you wanted to get some sweeter esters and more floral esters in there, and and for like whiskeys, you don't want a floral note in your whiskey. You want, more of a bitter and different notes, right? So different distillations. So yeah, certain stresses and can be a good thing, but it's I generally tell people we don't want to stress yeast, because that's kind of an advanced thing, and we want to learn not to. And then once we get to the certain point where we're really good and consistent, then we can start experimenting with some complex things like intentional yeast stressing to create congeners. Uh, that some are good, some are bad, uh, and creating more interesting flavors and unique flavors. Yeah, it is. It is a lot of work, but it's a labor of love, and there's some initial cost. I've got like some screen boards set up, and it's great for airing them out. I use sheets, bed sheets to soak them in during the summers. Lay them out, spread out the seed, soak them down, put a sheet over top of it, keep the wind and animals and everything from blowing them everywhere and break them down. And I can just keep those sheets moist, as the day goes by. I can, you don't want to do it in the heat of the sun because it gets too hot. You don't want to, denature your malt by your malting, because you can denature the enzymes in it if it gets too hot. So, a shaded area, but And when you dry it, you don't want to dry it at a high temperature either, because you're going to defeat the purpose, unless you're just using it for flavor. If you're malting for flavor, it's not that important. But if you're doing it for diastatic power, you don't want to denature those enzymes that you're creating. What's going on, Cave Daddy? Good to see you. Sorry I'm so far behind. I'm just about 22 minutes as usual. That's better. Awesome. Love to hear it, brother. And you can save some of that uh, for a nice little yeast log we've been talking about. Just don't char it, and just use some to soak up your yeast. What's going on, Trigger Woods? What's going on, DJ? Uh-oh, gotta go to work. Uh-oh, you had preservatives? That sucks. Yeah, you gotta use those 100% fruit, 100% fruit juices, and really got to avoid anything with potassium metabisulfate or potassium sulfate or sodium benzoate. Gotta avoid those. Yeah, sorry to hear that, brother. Yeah, the preservatives are there. I mean, yeast is a fungus, right? And a lot of the preservatives are there to prevent funguses from taking hold, and bacteria and other things from taking hold. So that's their purpose. So um, yeah. I mean, everybody's got different budgets. I mean, I'm a member budget. Some people can, they can afford to junk down $3,000 or $4,000 for a big copper steel, and they can buy those $60,000, $80,000 new trucks every few years. I ain't one of them though. I got more important things to do with my money. I got yeah, what little I got of it. And I mean, we might just be a little cool right now, brother. It may be working and just a little cool and being a little slow. So uh, don't dump it. Just be patient with it and see what happens. Yeah, when if you can get pure cider that's just from the pressed uh, juice with no preservatives at all, that's good. And some, just check your labels. You got to check your labels, and even if it does have preservatives, sometimes we can maybe add some water and some concentrates that might not have. And but again, it could be temperature, that's causing it to just be slow. So it may not all be lost, especially if you've added some sugar to it. The yeast should be able to get to that sugar and kind of ferment that. So if you've added some water, and sugar, it may just have to dilute it down a little bit, but it's not all lost. Um, but I never throw anything away unless it's covered in bacteria or scorched. Yeah, I love the little 18-gallon beavers. Those are great. DeBosch, that's actually who I bought my little column from, and they're fine. They they're fine. They got good customer service. I asked them questions, they replied, and they thought I was complaining that I was actually talking about the little digital thermometer that came on it. It came with no batteries, and I really wasn't expecting it to do anything. I really don't care if it worked or not. I wasn't buying it for that. It'd been nice if it had them, just to, eye candy or something to look at. I wasn't really gone by it, but it'd been, nice. So I didn't know what kind of battery I was supposed to use or what size, because I didn't see it anywhere. But they got back to me. They thought I was making a big complaint. I'm like, no. In fact, I bought another one. It's a really good value. Yeah, the thumper keg. Uh, to get a higher ABV or more, you won't get a higher ABV, but you will get more quantity if you add tails to your thumper. Bumper keg, we call thumper. Um, so if you add tails to that, you can get the alcohol, out of that, and increase the quantity, not quality and not ABV, but you'll get more of it. You'll get more product. Yeah, and the thumper, that's kind of an intermediate thing. For beginners, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using it. I want them just to get used to using the pot, the condenser, condensating it, and just keeping it as simple as possible. Thumpers tend to load up if they're too far away from the steel, and your steam has a chance to condense and cool off. A lot of times it'll start filling up in the thumper, and that's not necessarily a good thing, especially if it gets to the point where it's puking over into, and then you can worry about pressure buildup. Once it gets to that point, so it can be an issue. So thumpers are okay to use, but we used it basically to put in tails to increase the quantity, and we also use it to increase proof by giving it a second distillation. Now that you can raise your proof by getting a second distillation, and you can increase the quantity by adding tails to it. So it's a second distillation. It takes water out of the distillate, which increases your proof. If you don't load it down with tails, if you do load it with tails, you will retain more water, but you'll get more alcohol quantity as well. So it's a good tool to use, and now people are using it to infuse flavor with, in which case I would just use an infuser, because if you use a thumper for an infuser, it takes a lot of your infusion purees or whatever that you're using. It takes a lot to fill up a thumper if it's properly sized. So. But in the old days, a lot of times the thumper was used because back then we didn't have amylase, right? And their starting gravities a lot of times 104.050. And when you have a low starting gravity like that, your first run, you really don't produce a lot of alcohol, and or a higher proof of alcohol, I should say. You don't produce a real high proof of alcohol. And a lot of times they would run it twice, right? 2x and 3x, run it 2 or 3 times. And that's why you see the 2 or 3x on the jugs in the old times. And that's how many times it got run. By the time you got it up to the proof where they wanted it, then they'd proof it down. They'd get it to a certain cleanliness. They get the distillate pretty clean and clean out a lot of the other flavors, and then they would proof it down and get a pretty good alcohol that way. But we use thumpers to eliminate from having to do that, right? So we can use the thumper in line and get that second distillation, uh, and not have to run it 2 or 3 times, right? But we're starting out with higher gravities and higher proofs these days, so um, it's a little less of a necessity for that purpose. So most people don't use it for increasing proof. A lot of times now it's used for either adding tails or infusing. Yeah, that's what my thoughts are exactly, JJ. I mean, there's only $10, $20 difference in price a lot of times, so it's a no-brainer. Get the bigger one for sure. 15 to 18. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take me a little bit of honey shine instead of that 130. Again, thanks, Mike, for the honey shine. Let's keep it there. Yep, and especially if it fills up all the way. Those things fill up all the way, and you get a problem. Pin grill, yep. Yeah, if you're using a thumper, make sure that you have a valve of some sort on the top of your steel, on your cape, preferably on your head, or you can break that pressure because once you don't have a clear line of air pressure anymore. You know, you've got a vacuum now, and you've got something that's not an open air, and you can develop a back pressure and cause your steels to implode if you don't. Once they start cooling off and the inside and outside temperature changes so much, it just and it can't suck up enough water backwards through that steel enough to feel to avoid that, and it just sucks right in, man. It's amazing. I've seen people with $2,000-$3,000 copper steels, brand new, proud, had no clue about that, forgot about it, ran it. Next thing you know, their dreams just went. That's the way their steels looked after it happened. It's a horrible thing to see $2,000-$3,000 just go on one little swoop. So, just having a half-inch valve, $5-$10 valve on their cap, open that thing up and allow the air to it and let it suck air in as it needs to, would have saved $2,000-$3,000, right? It's like that $5 part on your engine that keeps it running. Your whole engine, would break down if it wasn't for that $5 part, right? That's that part you don't want to be without. Yeah, when he's talking about closed unit, you don't have that open air anymore, right? With the regular steel, the vapors come up, they go through the cone, the lint arm, the head, the lint arm, the column, and then through the worm. But there's air, there's open air, always being able to go back and forth as temperatures change. It's open air. Once you add that thumper in line, you've got the downcomer going into a liquid in that thumper, which is no longer an open air system anymore. It's a closed system. So that's what he's talking about when he says closed unit. You're closing the system, and you don't have the ability for air to have that proper movement back and forth. And when the temperature's cool and it's warm in the steel and the air temperature's cool and everything's just right, and the outside temps are cool and inside. I mean, you can do it with a 55-gallon drum. You can take a 55-gallon drum, junk, don't do it stainless, cheap. And you can look on YouTube, pull up the video, imploding 55-gallon drums. And they'll heat oil or water up inside the drum, and then they'll take the heat away, and they'll take a real cold mist of water and spray over it, and that drum will just implode, man. It's a cool video to watch, but it's good to know. Yeah, I'm a redneck science guy. I like it. Yeah, Bill Nye, the redneck science guy. I'm Bad Santa, the redneck science. The scientists. That's what me and Eric call ourselves, the scientists. Oh, Eric, he's a character. He's still active. He's doing his blacksmithing thing now. He's gone from one hobby to the next. He's a big blacksmith now, making nice knives and tools and stuff. It's pretty cool though. Something I've always wanted to get into. Exactly, it's a great use for that thumper. If you want to do on the grain distillation and you don't want to scorch it, put it in a thumper. And that's why I always talk about putting that cream corn in your thumper. It'll help, makes it good. Put you some tails and some cream corn in there. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I like Bill Nye too. He's cool. It's all science, brother. I love anything technical, technology. Man, I'm into it. Oh, I guess I can show you my. It's heavy. Hold on, just. Oh, this is my new computer I'm building. This is the wiring I got to deal with. Hell, I don't have enough light to show it very well. You can't hardly see it, but there's a whole mess of wires I got to get taken care of. I guess you can kind of see them there when it's on the side. But yeah, I gotta straighten up all that wire. But I'm building a computer. Oh. And hopefully y'all can still hear me. I unplugged. Oh, that was just my headphones, so my microphones are good. I don't use the microphone on my headset. A lot of times that would turn everything off. Okay, yeast nutrients. Now, what we're talking about, what are we talking about as far as tomato paste? Tomato paste doesn't have enough yan and fan. Yeast assimilable nitrogen and free amino nitrogen are two things that are essential for uh, the growth of your yeast and to feed them. Kind of like the nitrogen that we feed our plants in our gardens, right? They got to have the right nutrients or they won't grow well. They'll grow, but they won't grow well. They'll produce, but they won't produce well. You'll get smaller fruits. You'll get, ugly plants. They may shrivel up and die. They stress. And yeast are the same way. You got to feed them and take care of them and give them the nutrients that they need to get out of them what you want. And the better that you do at that, the more fruits from the labors that you put into it, literally. So tomato paste does have some nutrients in it. And, I used to be a big anti-tomato paste guy because I knew it didn't have any fan, but I did some research and some study on it, and there are some benefits from it. That there are certain things in there that you don't have to have, but having in there isn't a bad thing, right? So it's a supplemental, just like you can take vitamins and get the essential vitamins that your body needs, and that will be good for your health. But there's also some supplements that you can take that also make it maybe even a little bit better. I'm not saying that you should use tomato paste. I'm saying that you can, and it won't hurt, and that there are some benefits from it, but it's not a necessity. It's kind of in addition to. Uh, so, given the fact that they don't have the antifan, yeah, your yeast can survive without them. They're going to stress and they're going to cannibalize each other instead. So instead of adding dead yeast for them to eat the dead yeast, they start creating dead yeast by consuming each other once, and that's a stressful situation for them. So you can add dead yeast to a yeast colony, and then they're not dying from lack of food and cannibalizing each other. They're just eating something that's already dead, if that makes sense to you. um, but tomato paste isn't necessarily a good flavor, especially if we're making wines or beers. So this isn't all about distillation. I can't imagine making a good wine and having tomato paste as my nutrient, right? So there are other nutrients out there. Diammonium phosphate, is an alternative that a lot of people use. It's perfectly fine to use, but it's something that you don't want to overuse. And they're finding now that it's best to use it bits at a time instead of all at once initially. So you don't have that vigorous growth and then that slow down. You feed it to them a little bit at a time, and it has a nice, gradual growth pattern instead of just great and then decline. You just have a nice straight line, feeding cycle, and that's the best way to do it instead of giving all to them at once. We're finding. But you definitely don't want to overdo it either, because too much nutrients can be as bad as not enough, and actually be worse depending on what nutrient that you're using. Not all fermentations will require nutrients. When you have grain nutrients, especially malted grains, most of your malts will have plenty of anafan and all the, benefit, all the other nutrients, micronutrients that you need for a fermentation. A lot of fruits don't. A lot of people say, "Oh, there's plenty there for the yeast to eat." They think just because we can eat it, the yeast can, right? And it's not the way it works. So you wouldn't necessarily use tomato paste on your roses or on your plants and stuff, because that's just not enough nitrogen. It's not the right type. It's not assimilable. The plants can't consume it. It might create some molds on the ground that end up being, negative, and that would create a problem. It might acidify the soil, and it's like some basic soil, and you need calcium instead of acidic. There's so many different variables, right? So tomato paste isn't always the best thing to use. It's a great little supplement. It works well for sugar washes, I'll say. If you're going to make a vodka and you're going to do a sugar wash, and you want to give it some supplemental nutrients, tomato paste is fine to add along with dead yeast, or yeast holes, which is basically a fermo, which is actually pretty expensive, a nutrient. If you want to buy Fermax and Fermo, it's organic, and it's basically just dead yeast holes, and it's an expensive nutrient, and it's a good nutrient. So, but not all your distillates, not all the things that you're making will have it. Like if it's just corn, not malted, then it might be slightly deficient on nutrients. You can use a tad bit. Bran flakes, perfect. Amanda and we're talking about that as well. Bran flakes, great. And if you want to use raisin bran, even better. You get a little, if you like the flavor that the raisins impart, they soften it. There is some nutrients in there, that micronutrients, again, like the tomato paste, micronutrients in there as well that help supplement. But just as far as yan and fan, that bran is really very, very, very beneficial. You get a lot of good nutrients out of the bran flakes, because that bran, it's basically flaked bran. It's just been steam rolled into a flake, and it's got the anafan that you need. So it's a good nutrient. So when you get to the bottom of the box, save that dust, because that dust is a fine little nutrient to add to your corn. Or if you got a sugar wash, or if you've got a lot of different high sugar, no nutrient fermentations, it's absolutely good to use. And there's different ones, but I think Yeast holes, we got plenty of them from our past usage, right? We've got that yeast bed that, and you can take that and take a jar of it and dump it in a pot of boiling water, kill off all that yeast intentionally, let it cool, and we now have yeast nutrients, dead yeast holes. Perfect, perfect nutrient. So again, we can perpetuate those yeast, we can propagate them, we can create nutrients with them, and avoid having to buy, tomato paste isn't cheap, and it's not the best thing to use. Yeah, I like now I've noticed Welch's. Now they have different types. Some will have preservatives, some won't. The 100% no preservative free is really what you want. A little bit more expensive though. It's expensive stuff. And some of these store brands have the same thing. Preservative free, 100% juice, but just read the labels. Making a yeast log is pretty simple, brother. In your fermentation, just throw your little block of oak in there and just let it float. And when you get ready to run it, take it out, and you can wrap it up, put it in a baggie, put it in the fridge. It'll go dormant. And when you get the next fermentation, throw it in there, and it will create enough yeast in there to, depend on the size of your fermentation, of course, but for, the small batch like what most of us do, it'll be perfectly fine. It'll add that yeast to it, and they'll live on that log, and you can use the yeast all that and perpetuate it for a long time. But I like saving that yeast, and I like having it jarred up because I like having those nutrients that come along with it too, and those work well in conjunction with each other. And you can just add them all at once, and it works well. So I wouldn't necessarily add the sludge from my fermenter. Um, that's going to give you some really high yeasty flavors. It's not going to be the best. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people like it. Uh, Spent grains in the yeast bed is going to be a little bit different. When we talk about spent grains, a lot of times that's just grains. You sparge all the small finer stuff off, and you just have the grains, behind, versus the yeast bed that's in the bottom that it's mostly just yeast, dead yeast, and finer stuff, particulates. But yeah, if you really want to try something good and you're dealing with grains, try taking just fresh corn and pureeing it, or buying a can of cream corn. You can get it pretty cheap. Get the off brand; it doesn't matter, and add that to your thumper. And you can add some tails if you want to increase your volume. And I think you'll be pleasantly pleased with it. It works well. Man, I cannot believe gold is at over $5,000 an ounce. Man, back in the day, I bought some when England went off the gold standard. They sold off a lot of their gold, and a lot of it went for less than 300 an ounce, and the market for gold went way down. And this was in the 80s. I'm gonna have to Google it, find the exact date. Uh, no, this wasn't 31. I guess this is when they just decided to sell off instead of going off the gold standard. They went off the gold standard in 31. Definitely wasn't then. Um, Yeah, let's see. I don't remember what it was. It was probably, I guess, the mid to late 90s. Um, England, I guess they sold off their reserves. It wasn't their standard. Um, Maybe they just sold their gold off. Yeah, 99 to 2002, sale of British gold reserves. Yeah. And yeah, and it went down to 252 to 260 an ounce. And about that time, I was working, I was making decent money, and I decided to invest a little bit in, and I think mine was like 280. You know, it was a little bit more than the 260. I think I paid like 280, a little less than 300 per ounce. And I bought some of the coins, you know, the gold rounds and stuff, not coins themselves, but they're made by the U.S. Mint, but they're not like a numismatic coin. They just call them rounds, like the silver rounds, prospector rounds. So I bought some of that, and man, I sold that at $1,400-$1,500, and I was like, man, what I'm making bank, because at the time, you know, I was reading that there's so much gold in sands and stuff, and really at eight to $1,200, they can produce gold from these sands, so it really shouldn't get much beyond that. And reading all into this shit, and I was so good, man. I made 5 times my money, man. I bought it for less than three and selling it for $1,400-$1,500. I'm making bank, man. I'm doing good. Now look at it, man. It's over 5,000 an ounce, man. That's crazy. Yeah, you don't need a thumper. I mean, you can run it without a thumper. A thumper's, it does have its use. You know, it is good for increasing the proof on lower proof alcohol runs. You know, so if you've got some that's or a low starting gravity, and you end up with a 1040, 1050, and you don't have a lot of alcohol in it, or a low gravity beer, and running a beer that's 6%, or a wine that's around that. Yeah, it's great for distilling that and getting a higher proof if you want. And you can also infuse a little bit with it as well. Yeah, be very careful. That's why I always say puree. Um, Definitely want to eliminate anything solid that goes into there. Cherries have been a really bad thing. Uh, Grapes, another big problem. Getting inside that pot, it's boiling. It's doing a second fermentation, and you got liquid coming in, is forced air coming into that pot, and it's getting turbulent, and it's also retaining water, so that water level is increasing. And if it's undersized thumper, a lot of times a grape can get thrown up, or when you put the lid down that's got the down comber, and it pierces some of the grapes in there, you've just clogged that down comber with grapes and created back pressure that you won't believe, that can explode your steel. Or it can bounce up and go into the condenser line and get pushed by pressure, and then it gets stuck, and then you don't realize your steel's building pressure until all of a sudden you start seeing distillate coming out the seams, and it's about to blow. And sometimes they do blow before they blow out the seams, because those seams and tri-clamps are designed for around 300 psi, so they'll hold quite a bit of pressure, more than most of your copper steels are designed to, or most steels period, are designed to handle. So yeah, it can be an explosive situation. And that's what we try to teach you, is safety. right? Yeah, I mean, there's try telling you the cream corn or fresh corn, just puree it up, put it in a blender, and just cut it off the cob, put it in a blender, puree it up, add a little water if you want to, get a little corn milk going, and put that in your thumper. Uh, Definitely be pleased. And if you're having a smaller infuser, it's even better, so you don't have to use so much. Yep, it doesn't take but one little mistake. That's why I always say if you're getting into this, one of the pieces of equipment that you want to add is a good extinguisher rated for what you're working with, because accidents can happen. And once you do it so much, you become a little lax, and it's no big deal. Right, I'm gonna go have a cigarette kind of thing, and I'll be back. Yeah, I'll let it run. It's like always, nothing different. All of a sudden, you realize that clamp wasn't on good, or you forgot to shut that valve off, and you got steam, coming out, alcohol steam coming out. Yeah, it can. Um, the best way to avoid the implosion is it doesn't happen while it's functioning, right, Ocean? Um, it happens when you're done and when you cut the heat off, and then you get to deal with these temperatures. All you have to do is install a valve, just a gate valve on that on the cap, um, or if it's whatever type of head you got on the top of your steel, on the cape, on the cap, wherever, just put a valve and just for air to travel freely. That's all you need. Or you can put a vacuum brake, but have them both is great. That way, if you forget to open that valve, you'll have that secondary backup. That if it works, then it'll prevent it from imploding. Um, because it can happen. You can sit there and sample those heads and try to make those cuts and do a little sippy sip until you get a little tipsy, because that high proof, bringing that 140, 60 proof coming off there, it'll get you lit up pretty quick. And sometimes people forget to open that valve up. So having that vacuum will definitely help, that vacuum brake. It does have to do with temperatures, but it's the outside temp being cooler than the inside temp, and it not being able to pull the liquid to adjust to those different temperatures, and it creates a vacuum. And when it creates that vacuum, it tries to suck air back into it. And if you have that thumper where that downcomer is going down into liquid, it can't get that air quick enough to offset the temperature change, and that's when it creates more and more of a vacuum. And it's all science. It's thermodynamics and science. Check it out on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in imploding a 55-gallon drum, and you'll pull up some videos where they intentionally create this situation. And they should talk in depth about the science of it and how the outside temperature is different than the inside temperature, and it can't make these changes quickly enough. This is going to be a sealed off 55-gallon drum, which is basically the same thing as a still with a downcomer in liquid, because it's sealed off now. It's a closed system. Um, if you use too much diammonium phosphate, it can affect flavors, and you definitely, can overuse it, and it can stress the yeast if you overfeed them. Right, exactly. Use too much and it's like burning out your plants. And the diammonium phosphate can give off flavors if you use too much. It's formulated to use, and I mean it's used in the wine industry by some of your finest of wines and a lot of other places. You know, it's used quite frequently, but it's not overused. And if you know, a lot of people think, oh, a little bit's good, a whole lot must be better, right? And that works if you're drinking, but not if you're making using nutrients, right? So so yeah, too much is not a good thing either. Yeah, and you don't have to have the valve. You can just loosen up the tri clamp on your cap, and you know it doesn't matter if a little bit of steam gets out. You know, it's as long as your open heat sources are shut off, all your electric heat, everything shut off, and you know might not be good for getting some of that moisture inside the shed or shine shack or whatever you got, kitchen, whatever. Um, but yeah, be some floating your still. Yeah, somebody said shots. Yeah, rums definitely need nutrients for sure. You can see wormy. But yeah, a lot of your higher sugars that don't have like plant matter, and even if it has plant matter, like fruits and brandies, most of those fruits don't have the anaphanin. Now some of them do a little bit, so you want to adjust how much, and that is the science in itself. You know, how much nutrients do I add? And that's why it's best just to use the hulls, the yeast hulls, because you can't add too many of those. It's as long as there's enough, it's fine. But yeah, rum needs it, tequila needs it. Anything that's just plain vodka made with potatoes, it's going to need it. There's anything that doesn't contain a grain or a malted grain. A malted grain, anything malted doesn't need it because the malts have plenty. Corn has almost enough where you really don't have to use it if you don't want to, but it wouldn't hurt. It's got like 90% of what it needs. It's some high percent, so it's got almost all it needs. But there's a little bit fraction that you could add that would help if you wanted to get you know that extra. But yeah, you can use too much, but usually the yeast hulls, the fermo, really, you're not going to use too much of that. A lot of the other stuff, like Fermax and Fermade and DAP and other ones, yeah, you can definitely use those to excess. But like with the Fermo, you can't. But it's a little bit more expensive, and we can make our own, right? So bran flakes, yeast hulls, that's all you need, man. That's all you need. Bran flakes and yeast hulls. Yeah, yeah, bran is good, and it's wheat. Bran flakes are made from wheat, and it's malted and gelatinized, and it's good. It's got everything you need in it. Bran flakes are awesome, and dead yeast is even better. So the combination of the two is great because you get a little bit of benefit from the flavor of the bran. And it doesn't take a lot. You don't need to be dumping a whole box of cereal in your mash. I'm talking about just a handful in the bottom, depending on the size of your mash. Scale it up down. Malto meal, anything, yeah, anything, any of those old malted cereals. I'm sure uh, Cheerios probably has some, in it as well. Bran flakes is just, it's just standard. You can get the store brand. You don't have to get the Kellogg's, the expensive stuff. You can get, just the store brand. It's just a they take a malted flour, they roll it out, and they make flakes out of it. Right? It's just flaked, pressure steamrolled, and flaked. Yeah, malto meal's fine. But again, Yeast holes. We got plenty of those after every fermentation in the bottom. We got good yeast and we got yeast holes we can make. Add them to boiling water. We got all the nutrients we need. Yeah, yeah, like we're saying, basically when you use the yeast, that yeast bed in the bottom has live yeast and dead yeast in it. That's some of the best. That's the best nutrient ever. So take some of that, put it in boiling water. It'll kill off all the yeast, and drain, let it settle, drain off all the water, scrape up that sludge, and feed your yeast with it. They'll love it. That's all you really need. Uh, or bran flakes. Those are the two best. And anything like we were talking about the malto meal cereals, any of the cereal grains and stuff. Read the ingredients, and there's also a lot of other nutrients in there that are beneficial to the fermentation. You just want to stay away from stuff that's fortified with iron, right? So if it, try to stay away from really high iron fortification cereals, because those aren't bad. A lot of people take vitamins and supplement their fermentation with crushed up vitamins, and again, just make sure you get one that's not fortified with iron. Iron affects the calcium uptake in the chemical process, so it's something that you really don't want. Yep, absolutely, brother. Yeah, I wish I'd held. Man, I thought I was doing good. 5 times my money. I was bragging, telling all my friends, yeah, how much your investment stood? My investment, God, I got 5 times the value. Now look at it, man. Jesus. Not only known, I never dreamed the gold would be at $5,000. And silver's over 100. It used to be 20, 25 all the time. Over $100. Now I might sell. I still got some silver. I may have to just break over and sell it. I'll get rid of it. It's not doing me good. But most of it's coins. I sold off most of my silver when it got up to 80, and I had 20, probably in a lot of that, 15 to 20 in that. But I kept my coins. I just sold the rounds, the prospector rounds. Yeah, Downcomer and Spear, same thing. And that's why I sold, Scott. It wasn't that I at the time I thought, oh, I'm just going to sell now because it'll never get higher, and I'm just going to sell it, and I'm going to get 5 times my money. It was some tough times, right? It was some hard times. There were a few things that happened, separations, house payments, uh, business slowdowns. Yeah, it wasn't a good time, and that's kind of what I bought it for. And it was time for me. It helped. I don't regret it because I needed to at the time, but it'd have been nice if I could have gotten by with having to sell it then. I'd have had a lot more now, and it wasn't a whole bunch, but it got me through some tough times. So it paid off. Oh yeah, yeah, and sugar, as well. Shadow, it's like a lot of people have a lot of sugar to their wines and stuff, and to make a true brandy, you really need to utilize all just the fruit juices, the sugars from the fruit itself, and distill that. That's not what a lot of people do. Yeah, my legs going, man. If you see my head start shaking a little bit, it's because my legs going, and I haven't had a stroke or anything. I'm okay. It's just I've got hyperactive leg syndrome. I've had it since I was a kid, and you know. And it was something sitting in church. Man, I'd be sitting there and listening to the president. I'd have both my legs going like like I was a bait, playing the drums, and next thing I know, my mom would she'd slap that knee. I look, and everybody on the whole pew, man, their heads were bouncing because I was shaking the whole pew, and it got to where people didn't sit with us. They didn't sit in the same pew we did because they didn't want to sit there and be shaking the whole thing. That drove my mom nuts. Actually, it's a good time. You don't need to add them all initially, and you don't need to initially add any. It's a very good point. They're finding out now that step feeding is the way to do it, not just dump all the food in there at the beginning, like I've been doing for many years, and most other people have as well. It's best to wait a little while, let the yeast get a little hungry, and then slowly feed them over a period of time instead of all at once getting that vigorous, like we talked about earlier. Step feeding, a little bit at a time. So if it needs a tablespoon, calls for a tablespoon of nutrients, we're going to give it uh, half a teaspoon 6 times or whatever it adds up to, to get to that by the time we're done in a few days. Now, I will say with grain fermentations, they go so quick in 3 to 5 days. If you're going to need anything for a corn, a little bit, but for your grains, it's not going to need it. But for anything else, a lot of times a lot of these high sugar washes go fast, especially like a tequila, higher temp yeast, and they go pretty quickly. A lot of sugar involved, so you don't have weeks to slowly add it. Right now, for like brandies and wines, that's when you can really do the step additions and benefit the most from it is in your brandies and wines. But your sugar washes, your rums, your tequilas, yeah, you're going to have to accelerate that feeding period. But for brandies and wines, absolutely step feed it over a longer period of time. Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought about earlier. Clint messaged me, "Are you okay, Joe?" And I guess he saw me sitting there in my head doing this, and he thought I had stroked out. Yes, I malted corn and I've malted wheat. I like to malt wheat. I'm not malted barley. I buy the malted barley, but I malted wheat and corn. And I don't malt corn anymore because it's kind of a redundancy. It's good for flavor. It's okay to do for flavor, but I don't malt it for the enzymes anymore because it just takes too long to gelatinize it without denaturing the alpha. And you have to cook it at low temps for a long, long time. It's no, I will never do that again. When I start getting drunk, I start putting my hands. Yeah. See now I'm finding out how my parents knew I was drinking. See, I have the leg and the hands because I can drink quite a bit without slurring. I'm not a big slurrer. In fact, I've been pulled over for DUI, and the cops they did the test there once I got there, and it was so high. They're like, "Well, there's no way that you're that drunk." And I'm like, "I know. There's just no way that it's got to be wrong. There's something wrong with that machine." He's like, "Well, I have to get it recalibrated, but I know you've been drinking." And I'm like, "Yeah, but not that much." And they're like, "No, there's no way." And and I sit and talk to you like I am right now, and have like 0.20 or something. Yeah, have real high. Yeah, now slowly for your brandies is definitely the way you're going to want to do it. But for your sugar washes, your rums, uh, your high, gravity, high sugar content washes like tequilas, rums, anything that's got a lot of sugar, yeah, you're gonna have to cut that. So it's gonna happen pretty quickly. Again, with the grains, not a big deal because you're really not going to need a lot of nutrients with those. But But for your brandies and for your wines, if you're a winemaker especially, yeah, you definitely want to step feed them. Yeah, looks like I'm about caught up. Yeah, that auto wreck, man. He's Cialis and that Viagra, man. That's what snorting will do to you. Get hard nosed. Get a hard nose. You malt for the flavor. Yeah. And it does. It does add a different flavor, especially with the wheat. I definitely like the malted wheat better than the straight. A little less grassy, little different flavor. I like it. And I like wheat. I like using wheat. All right, we're at about 11. Went longer than I thought. We're good for about 3 hours every time. Well, it's that time again, folks. I appreciate everybody tuning in and hanging out with us. Hope everybody's staying warm. A little fewer here than normal, but that's to be expected. There's a lot of people that are more worried about keeping their electric on. Some of them don't have electric. Some of them are cuddled up with their loved ones, and hope everybody that doesn't have power gets power soon. And sneaks in. Hope that vinegar's doing good, brother. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Mike's gonna have to listen to it again later tonight as he goes to bed. Got his terracotta heater keeping him warm there in his room. But those things do work well, with a little candle and stuff. They can save a life. If you have a candle in a terracotta pot in your car and it breaks down and your car dies and you're out on the middle of an interstate, you have nothing, it could keep you alive. Literally, it could keep you from freezing to death. So keep some blankets, some terracotta pots, and candles. And if you don't, candle doesn't fall over while you're asleep, like the blanket's on fire and you die in the fire, it can save your life. Yep, Sterno can. Hell yeah. Lost your peanut butter. Oh. Yep. Good to see you here, brother. All right, everybody. It's about 11 bells. It's Tuesday. A lot of people got to go to work tomorrow, and I got to go kiss Miss Santa good night. She's got to be up at 5. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you this weekend, Saturday, 31st. January 31st. So we'll see everybody this weekend. Hope everybody has a good week. Stay warm, stay safe, and we will see you this Saturday. Until then, shine on. Peace out. Love y'all. Have a good week.